Hey everyone, a quick heads up. Most people who enjoy these stories haven't subscribed yet. If you're liking the content, consider subscribing and dropping a like. It truly supports the channel. And I'm glad you're here. Also, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from, so share your location in the comments. I still flinch a little whenever my GPS recalculates. Most drivers get annoyed by that robotic voice. Rerouting, especially at 3 in the morning when you're running on truck stop coffee and muscle memory. Me, I go straight to cold, quiet panic. Because the last time my GPS decided it knew better than I did, it took me somewhere that shouldn't exist anymore. Name's Aaron. I've been running long haul for almost 20 years. Dry van, reefer, once in a while flatbed when the money makes it worth the headache. This run I'm about to tell you about was medical freight, high priority, temperature controlled, down along the U.S. Mexico borderline. I'd done that corridor enough times to know it by feel. The way the desert wind leans on the cab. The way the sky turns into black glass and eats your headlights whole. This particular night, I rolled out of El Paso just before midnight. Clear sky, no storms in the forecast, air dry enough to bite your nose. The dispatch was simple. Get the load down near Nogales, lock your hours, sleep in the yard. Nothing unusual. My truck at the time was a 2019 Freightliner Cascadia. Solid girl. Never gave me trouble beyond the usual death tantrums. All the electronics were good, my CB was quiet, and the reefer unit hummed in that steady, reassuring way behind me. For the first couple hours, it was just me and the desert. If you've never driven that stretch, it's hard to explain the silence. People think it's peaceful. Sometimes it is. But there's a point, somewhere between civilization and nowhere, where the silence stops being relaxing and starts feeling watchful. Like the whole landscape is holding its breath, waiting for you to cross some invisible line. Around 2:30 a.m., I noticed the GPS lagging. The little arrow that's supposed to sit neatly on the highway line was drifting, then snapping back into place. A second of delay, then 2. I tapped the screen, checked the signal, full bars. The truck's dash readout was fine, speed steady at 62, cruise control locked. I told myself it was just a software hiccup. Happens. 10 minutes later, the GPS zoomed out on its own. The map pulled back like it was being pinched by invisible fingers, the way it does when you're trying to see your overall route. Except my hands were on the wheel. I watched the screen blink once, then redraw a new purple line. New route found, the voice chirped. Shorter by 12 minutes. I frowned. Out there, at that time of night, I don't like surprises. But the new route didn't look crazy. Just a service road that cut across and dumped me back on the main highway closer to my exit. I'd heard about some newer pavement along that side, and 12 minutes doesn't seem like much until you're counting minutes against hours of legal drive time. I hesitated. I still remember the feel of that moment. The comfort of the known road versus the tiny, nagging urge to just follow the tech and get it over with. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I'd been doing this long enough to handle a little service road, so I took the exit. The ramp dipped slightly and curved, and the moment my rig left the familiar highway, the sound changed. It wasn't dramatic. No thunder, no lightning. Just a muffling, like someone had closed a door on the world. The hum of distant traffic behind me faded faster than it should have. In the mirrors, the highway lights shrank and then were gone, swallowed by the desert's darkness. The service road was smooth. New asphalt, freshly painted lines, no cracks. But the edges looked wrong. I caught it first in the periphery, the way the gravel shoulder didn't quite match the road, the way the scrub and sand seemed older, like the pavement had been dropped on top of a photograph from another decade. I turned the CB up a little, just to break the silence. Nothing. Not even the usual late-night ghosts chirping nonsense on Channel 19. Just soft, persistent static, like someone breathing through cloth. I checked the dash. 2:47 a.m. Fuel good. Temperatures good. Reefer steady. Everything normal. Then I saw the mile marker. You learn to read those little green signs without really looking at them. After enough miles, they're like a metronome in your peripheral vision. But this one snagged my attention like a hook. Mile 313. The number wasn't what bothered me. It was the sign itself. The metal was faded, sun-bleached almost white. The numbers looked like they'd been stenciled in the 70s, thick, blocky, chipped at the edges, rust chewed at the corners. Bullet holes, 3 of them, punched clean through the middle. All of that would have made sense if the road around it matched. But that asphalt was dark, smooth, perfect. No patchwork. No cracks creeping out from the base of the post. The sign looked like it had been dug up from some old forgotten road and planted in fresh tar. I eased off the throttle, letting the truck drift down from 62 to about 45. My headlights washed over the sign, and for a second, the reflective numbers didn't reflect. They absorbed. The white turned this deep, flat black, like painted over. Then they blinked back to normal. I felt a shiver crawl up under my jacket. "That's nothing?" I muttered to myself. "Heat haze. Old metal. You're tired, Aaron. That's all." Then the air in the cab went cold. Not a draft, not a gentle change. 1 second I was in that usual desert night warmth, that dry, oven-like air that clings even with the AC humming, and the next second it was like someone opened a freezer behind my neck. My breath fogged, just barely. The steering wheel, solid and warm in my hands a moment before, felt slick and cold, like it had been sitting in shade all day. I glanced at the climate controls. Nothing had changed. AC still set steady. Fan normal. No warning lights. No mechanized wind. That's when I saw him. Right beside mile marker 313. At first I thought it was just another torn-up tarp caught on the fence. The desert's full of trash. Bags, tarps, sheet metal, that wind and time chew into weird shapes. But as my headlights swept over, that tarp straightened, tall, too tall, shoulders too squared. The shape was wrapped in something shredded, like black plastic that had been cut into strips and left to flap in the wind. Only there was no wind. Every strip hung motionless. It stood perfectly still, just inside the cone of my lights, turned toward the road. There was no face I could see, just a dark hollow where the head should have reflected something back. Not even a glint of eyes. Every instinct I had screamed to jerk the wheel, to give that thing a wide berth. But my hands felt slow, distant, like I was working a simulator with a delay. As I passed him, he didn't move, didn't step, didn't turn, didn't lift an arm, just watched. And then everything died. Every light on my dash went black at the same time. Headlights, interior, marker lights, even that faint glow from the radio display. Gone. The CB clicked off mid-static. The hum of the reefer behind me cut out. The engine, which I hadn't heard consciously in hours, fell silent so completely that my ears rang. You don't realize how many sounds a truck makes until they're all taken away at once. For a heartbeat, I thought the engine had seized. Panic flared, images of losing power steering, power brakes. But the wheel turned easily beneath my fingers. Too easily. The pedals felt dead, but the rig kept rolling, smooth as if I were on ice. I stomped the brakes. Nothing. No resistance, no grind. My foot went down, and the pedal sank like it was attached to nothing at all. The only sensation left was the faint vibration through the seat, like the road itself was carrying me. The desert outside my windows darkened. Not because the lights were out, but because the sky itself seemed to dim. The stars blurred, smeared into long, horizontal streaks, like someone was dragging a brush across wet paint. The mile markers, all those neat little green soldiers, vanished. The world narrowed to the faint suggestion of pavement ahead of me and the feeling that if I looked too far into the dark, something would look back. My hands were locked on the wheel, but I had the sick understanding that I wasn't steering anymore. I don't know how long that lasted. It could have been 30 seconds or 30 miles. I remember the taste of metal in my mouth, like I'd bitten my tongue. But I hadn't. I remember the smell of burnt rubber, even though I wasn't braking. And under it all, faint but clear, the scent of ozone. The air before a lightning strike. Somewhere in that nothing, the CB crackled. Just once. A tiny, tortured scrap of sound, like someone scratching their nail across a microphone. Then a voice, whisper thin, flattened by static but still shaped into words. 3013. It repeated, glitching over itself. 313 mile 313. My name rode in on the last burst. Clear. Calm. Aaron. Then the world snapped back on. Lights flooded the cab. blinding after all that dark. The engine roared like it had been running the whole time. The reefer kicked back into its steady rhythm. The radio blared some Spanish pop station. I don't even remember tuning in.my GPS chime. I sucked in a breath that tore at my lungs, like I'd forgotten how to breathe. My hands were shaking so hard on the wheel I had to tighten my grip to hide it from myself. Outside, the desert looked normal again. Stars in their places. The suggestion of distant fence line, scrub, rock. The asphalt beneath my tires hummed like usual. I glanced at the nearest mile marker as it slid by. Mile 343. I hadn't driven that far. I know I hadn't. My last sure memory was 313. According to my odometer, I'd covered close to 30 miles. No ramping up, no loss of speed. Just skipped. I pulled onto the next wide shoulder I saw and stopped. Brakes worked fine. Air pressure good. I climbed down on rubbery legs and walked the length of my rig, touching metal, checking tires, just to reassure myself that I was still here, still solid. The night pressed in, full of that ordinary desert quiet. Crickets, far-off bark of a stray dog, wind whispering across sand. Nothing else. By dawn, I had almost talked myself into believing it was some weird blackout, a microsleep, maybe, even though the idea terrified me more than ghosts. I told myself I'd imagined the voice on the radio, that my brain, half dreaming, had filled in the blanks. Then I hit the checkpoint. Border Patrol waved me over for a quick inspection. Routine. Guy in his 40s, uniform creased, smile tired but polite. He checked my papers, walked around the trailer, then leaned into my open door to glance at the cab. "You come down 27 the whole way?" he asked. "Mostly," I said. GPS rerouted me onto a service road for a bit. Cut back in around, hell, I don't know, 30 miles up, I guess. He frowned. "What service road?" I started to explain, tracing the route with my finger on the map. That's when I saw it, the purple line diverging from the main highway, threading across an empty stretch, then rejoining where I was now. Right in the middle of that void, a tiny label 313. The officer's face went flat. "Where exactly did it put you?" he asked quietly. I zoomed in. The map filled with gray nothing, no town names, no gas icons. Just that thin service road and one little marker, 313. "Here," I said. There was an old mile sign. Guy standing by it. Looked like a tarp or something. Road was new, though. He stared at the screen for a long second. "That road's closed," he said finally. "Has been for years. Officially, it doesn't even show on most systems anymore." Smuggler truck rolled there. Load caught fire, burned half a dozen people alive. They tore that strip up after. Shut it down. I felt my mouth go dry. Maybe they reopened it? He shook his head. "No, I was on that call." His eyes flicked up to mine, weighing something. "There's nothing there now. Just sand. You sure you didn't dream it?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to shrug it off, to make a joke, to chalk it up to fatigue or a bad GPS patch. But sitting there in the early light, with the desert stretching out behind us and my truck humming like it hadn't skipped a beat, all I could think about was that voice sliding out of the static point 3013. "You all right, driver?" he asked. I nodded. Signed the last of the paperwork. Pulled back onto the highway like nothing had happened. That was 3 years ago. Since then, no matter what truck I'm in, no matter what brand of GPS I'm using, mile marker 313 keeps showing up. Not always on the screen. Sometimes it's just on the road shoulder where it shouldn't be. A flash of old metal in the corner of my eye on routes I know like the lines on my hand. Sometimes it's on the dispatcher's notes. A typo in the address, a random 313 in the load number that no one else remembers typing. Once, parked at a rest area, my CB flicked on by itself. Channel 19. Nothing but static for a long time. Then, like someone leaning in right behind my ear, I heard it again. "Aaron, mile 313. I turned the CB off. Pulled the fuse out for good measure. Didn't matter. I still felt the cold air slide over the back of my neck. People ask me why I still drive, after all that. Truth is, the road's all I know. And whatever's tied to that marker, it's not the road's fault. Maybe it's mine. Maybe I crossed a line that night when I trusted the wrong voice. But I've learned one thing. Out there, in the silence between mile markers, there are roads that don't exist anymore. Routes torn up on paper but still waiting in the dark for someone to take the exit. And sometimes, if you're unlucky, the road remembers you. So if your GPS ever zooms out on its own in the middle of nowhere and offers you a shortcut you've never seen before, don't take it. Because once you've driven past mile marker 313, you don't really leave it behind. It just lets you think you did. I've been through that station more times than I can count. You run the border long enough, the checkpoints become just another part of the rhythm. Slow down, slide your window down, hand over the paperwork, answer the same 3 questions. It's like a metronome built into the night. My name's Rick. Been driving since '01. I haul a lot of high-value stuff these days, electronics, pharmaceuticals, sometimes medical freight, the kind of loads they watch closely. This run was standard issue. Phoenix down toward the border, cross over in the morning, drop at a warehouse on the other side, then deadhead back. Truck was a 2018 Kenworth T680. Good ride. Quiet cab, decent mattress, more computer than machine some days. The night I'm talking about, everything felt normal. Clear sky, cool air, thin crescent moon hanging low over the desert. That kind of stillness where you can hear the hum of your own tires more than the engine. I remember checking the dash clock as I rolled toward the inspection station. 2:34 a.m. That's the dead zone. Most cars are home, most regular people asleep. That's when it's just trucks, night shift cops, and whatever else chooses not to be seen in daylight. The station lights came into view like a floating island in the dark. Bright sodium lamps humming over concrete lanes, green signs hanging like ghosts. Declaration, commercial, inspection. I rubbed my eyes once, just to push back the burn of long hours, and flicked the CB on. The usual nighttime chatter had died down to a few distant voices, mostly Spanish, mostly bored. No warnings, no wrecks up ahead, no bear in the bushes calls. Just static humming under a couple of half-hearted conversations. Dispatch had me on a tight schedule, but I wasn't behind. Everything was on time. Reefer temp good. Fuel good. Logbook clean. I remember all this because I keep trying to find the moment where things turned. And I can't. The approach to the station is a gentle curve. You get about half a mile of warning, big reflective signs, speed limit dropping, rumble strips to wake up anyone drifting. I eased down from 65 to about 25, flicked my hazards on out of habit, and shifted my attention to the lanes. That's when I noticed something off. Every time I'd been through there before, the far right lane, booth number 4, was blocked. Cones, barricades, sometimes a closed sign zip-tied to the arm. They shut it down after an incident a few years back. Driver talk said an officer died on duty there during a pursuit, but you know how trucker gossip is. It blends fact with story so clean you can't separate them anymore. Tonight, the cones were pushed aside. The lane was lit up like the others. Fluorescent tubes buzzing overhead, casting that sickly white glow over concrete. The digital sign above the lane, the one I'd only ever seen black and dead, glowed a soft green. Open. I frowned. Maybe they'd finally reopened it. Station gets busy sometimes. They'd been talking about expanding operations. Made sense. The other lanes had a small line of trucks, 2 or 3 deep. Booth number 4 was empty. Good, I muttered. In and out. I downshifted, blinkers ticking, and guided the Kenworth toward the open space. My tires rolled over the faded paint of that unused lane. Old tire marks ghosted into the concrete, like echoes of trucks that weren't there anymore. As I drew closer, I saw her. She was standing inside booth number 4. Not behind the glass like they usually are, but right at the edge, where the concrete island meets your driver's side window. A woman. Shoulder-length dark hair pulled back. White blouse, the kind that belongs under a uniform vest, tucked into dark pants. No reflective vest, no hat. Just standing there, hands at her sides, staring straight at me. Even before I stopped, something in me tightened. Something small and animal. I've dealt with plenty of officers, and they all carry a certain presence. Hands near their belt, eyes scanning, professional distance. This woman wasn't like that. She was too still, too pale under the harsh white lights. I rolled to a stop beside the booth. Dash clock flicked to 2:37 a.m. The engine settled into a low idle. I could hear the soft clack-clack of the reefer behind me, the faint buzz of overhead lamps. Up close, I could see her face more clearly. She looked tired. Not just night shift tired. Worn down. Skin a little too smooth, like she'd been airbrushed. Eyes dark, rimmed with a shadow that didn't match any normal fatigue I'd seen. Her blouse was buttoned wrong at the collar, one side slightly higher, like she'd gotten dressed in the dark. She didn't step forward, didn't raise a hand, just watched me like I was the only thing existing in the world. I reached for my window switch and rolled it down halfway. The cool night air slipped in, carrying the smell of hot asphalt, diesel, and something faintly metallic, like old blood on steel, long cleaned but never quite gone. Evening, I said, because that's what you say. Got a reefer load heading south. Paperwork ready. Her lips parted, but she didn't look at the documents, didn't glance at my mirrors or my plates. She just leaned down slightly, like we were in a library, and whispered, "Turn back. He's still looking for you." Her voice didn't match her face. It was older, roughened, like someone who'd smoked half her life and screamed the other half. It scraped along my skin more than my ears, left goosebumps sitting up under my sleeves. I blinked, thrown off. "Ma'am." She didn't repeat herself. She didn't move at all. But for a second, just one, her eyes shifted, not to my face, but past me, over my shoulder, toward the empty passenger seat, and then further, like she was staring through the back wall of the cab, down the length of the trailer, to somewhere far behind me on the road. That's when the CB popped. Just a sharp crackle, like someone keying the mic and letting go. I flinched, glanced at the unit. Channel 19. No voice, just a hiss that sounded too much like breathing. "Sir." The shout came from my right. I damn near jumped out of my skin. A flashlight beam hit my passenger window, bright and sudden. I turned and saw another officer standing there. Male, mid-40s, uniform crisp, reflective vest on, one hand holding a clipboard, the other tapping lightly on my door. He looked annoyed. "Why are you parked in a closed lane?" he asked. I stared at him, then at the front of the truck, then back at the booth. Booth number 4 was dark. The fluorescent tubes overhead still buzzed, but the booth itself, the window, the interior, was unlit. No woman, no open sign. The digital display above the lane was black, its screen dead. Orange cones stood at the mouth of the lane like they'd never been moved. I was sitting in the middle of it, truck idling in a lane every driver knew was shut down. It was open, I said, hearing my own voice thin out. The sign was green. There was an officer. She told me. The man cut me off with a sigh that sounded more tired than angry. "Step out of the vehicle for a moment, sir." I killed the engine and climbed down. The concrete under my boots felt colder than it should have for that hour, for that climate. The air smelled different on this side of the cab. Stronger diesel, the faint sting of ozone like after a storm, even though the sky overhead was clear. The officer walked me a few paces forward and pointed back toward the booth. "Lane 4 has been closed since 2017, he said. "We don't use it. Power's cut. Cameras are off. Cones don't move unless we move them. You see any green lights?" I didn't. From that angle, the booth looked abandoned. Dust streaked the glass. Spiderweb cracks veined one corner of the window like something had hit it. Hard. The door to the side of the booth was chained shut. But I knew what I'd seen. "I pulled up," I said slowly. "Lights on. Green sign. Woman standing right there." I pointed to the spot beside my driver door. White blouse. Dark hair. She said, "Turn back," a voice whispered. Not in my ear. Not from the officer. From somewhere thin and far away, woven into the faint hum of the station lights, the hiss of my still cooling brakes. For a second, I thought I'd imagined it. Then the hair on my arms rose again, prickling under my shirt. The officer frowned. "Sir." "Nothing," I lied. "They ran my paperwork twice. Checked my load, my logs. talked quietly among themselves in that low, guarded tone cops use when they're trying not to spook somebody. No one accused me of anything, but I could feel the weight of their eyes like hands on my back. When they finally waved me through, I took the main open lane this time. I tried not to look left, but I did. You always do. In the reflection of my own mirror, I saw the dark shape of booth number 4 slide past. For a blink of time, the window wasn't dusty anymore. It was clear, lit from within by a soft, white glow. And in that glow, a pale face turned toward my truck, mouth moving. I blinked, and it was gone. Just darkness and glass again. The booth as dead as the rumors said. I told myself the rest of the night that it was fatigue. Station lights playing tricks. Old stories I'd heard from other drivers bleeding into reality. I made my delivery on time, got my stamp, parked up in the yard and tried to sleep. Didn't work. Curiosity's a dangerous thing in this line of work. You see something weird enough times, you either learn to ignore it or you start scratching. I've always been more of a scratcher. So later that day, before I headed back north, I pulled the SD card from my dashcam. I set my phone up on the bunk, plugged the card into a cheap little reader I keep, and fast-forwarded to 2:37 a.m. The footage was clear. Wide-angle shot of the approach, lights growing larger. The truck rolling up, smooth and steady. Booth number 4 was dark. No green sign, no glowing lane indicators. The cones were visible, faintly lit by my headlights, standing exactly where they should be. No woman, no white blouse, no movement besides my own rig. I watched my truck ease to a stop in the center of a closed lane. For a moment, there was nothing, just engine noise and the soft pinging of my cooling brakes. Then the audio spiked. It started as static, but not the clean kind. This was wet, distorted, like someone had recorded wind inside a tunnel. Underneath the rumble of the engine, I could hear something else. A layered murmur, too low to make out. The software's little audio bars jumped in uneven bursts, like someone was leaning close, then stepping back. I turned the volume up. At first it was just noise. Then, buried in the middle of it, like a voice underwater coming up for air, words began to separate themselves. Turn back. He's still looking for you. The sound wasn't coming from outside. It wasn't echoing like it should have if someone had been standing at my window. It was flat, compressed the way internal cab audio sounds, like the voice was speaking from inside the truck. I replayed that 5-second clip over and over. My hands were shaking by the third time. This wasn't a half-remembered dream or a trick of the light. It was recorded, embedded in zeros and ones on a cheap dashcam card. On the 5th replay, something else slipped through. Right after the last "for you," there was a pause, then a low, male voice, rough and angry. Just one word dragged across my nerves like a rusted chain. Driver. The way he said it, not like a title, like a warning, or a habit. I shut the video off, pulled the card, stared at it sitting in my palm like it weighed 10 pounds. Later, back at home, I mentioned it to another guy who ran the same route. Old-timer. The kind who knows every rumor and every back road. He went quiet when I described the woman, the lane, the time. Booth 4, he said eventually. Heard about that one. Officer died there during a chase. Guy in a pickup blew through the station loaded with people in the back. She tried to stop him, stepped out of the booth. He hit her, kept going. They never found everyone who was in that truck. He took a slow sip of his coffee. Some drivers say she still flags trucks down sometimes, especially ones that remind her of that night. Big white trailers, certain plate numbers, certain routes. What about the he? I asked. She said, he's still looking for you. My friend shrugged, but his eyes didn't match the casual gesture. Could be the guy who hit her. Could be some coyote still running that corridor. Could be something else. He paused. Or maybe she wasn't talking about herself at all. That was months ago. Since then, I still go through that station. You don't really get a say when the load pays well and the company books the route. I avoid looking at booth number 4, but sometimes my eyes stray. Sometimes, when the lanes are backed up and I'm stuck there breathing in exhaust and fluorescent hum, My CB will crackle on its own. Just static. Just wind. And every now and then, buried under all that noise, I hear it again. Turn back. He's still looking for you. I don't know who he is. I don't know why she singled me out. All I know is that booth hasn't been open for years, and my dashcam recorded a voice that doesn't belong to anybody on the living side of that glass. So if you ever roll through a border inspection at 2:37 a.m., and you see a lane marked closed but the lights look a little too bright, don't pull into it just because it's empty. Some lanes aren't closed because they're broken. They're closed because something on the other side is still working. I still tap the inside wall of my sleeper sometimes. Not because I expect an answer. If anything, I'm hoping I don't get one. But my fingers go there on their own when the road gets too quiet, like they're checking to see if the skin of the truck is just metal. Or something that learned how to knock back. Name's Dale. 23 years running long haul. Dry van, tanker for a few miserable years, then containers. I was coming up on the Texas border crossing that night, running a set of sealed steel boxes for a logistics company that handles the stuff nobody talks much about. Nothing illegal, at least that's what the paperwork said. Just industrial components and machined parts. All that vague corporate language that keeps your questions to yourself. The truck was a 2017 Peterbilt 579. Solid enough, with more miles on her than the company liked to admit. She rattled a little at idle, pulled a bit left if you let go of the wheel, but she always started when I turned the key. That's all you can really ask. It was around 2:20 a.m. when things started to go sideways. Weather was fair, warm Texas night, air thick but not choking. Sky clear, stars muted behind that faint haze you get near the border checkpoints from all the lights. I was making decent time. Dispatch wanted me staged near the crossing by dawn, ready to roll as soon as the customs boys opened their books. CB was mostly dead. A couple of Mexican drivers joking in Spanish. One guy warning about a blown tire in lane 2 an hour back. Then nothing but low static. The kind of quiet where even your own engine sounds louder, like it's the only heartbeat left in the world. I remember humming along at about 60, headlights carving out that tunnel of pale yellow ahead of me, when I felt it more than heard it. Thump. Just one small, dull thump from behind me. Not the boom of a loose pallet or the metallic clank of chains. This was softer, closer, like somebody rapped their knuckles against a door, testing if anyone was home. I frowned, checked my mirrors. Trailer was steady. No sway, no bounce. Reefer unit was off. These were dry containers. No temp alarms on the dash. Air pressure good. Probably just a shift in the load, I muttered. Steel banging steel. Another few miles. The road smoothed out. I reached for my coffee and took a sip of lukewarm, burnt liquid that had no business being called coffee. Set it back in the holder, and that's when it came again. Thump, thump, 2 taps this time. Barely audible over the engine, but I felt them through the floor. Little vibrations that worked their way up my boot soles into my ankles. I checked the mirrors again. Nothing. I told myself it was in my head. Long hours, white lines. The low hum of sleep pressing at the back of my eyes. Trucks will talk to you if you let them. Every squeak and ratchet starts sounding like words when you've been awake too long. Then it happened again. Thump, thump, thump. Slow. Deliberate. Evenly spaced, like someone counting under their breath. I tightened my grip on the wheel. Load shift, I said again. Louder this time, like I was trying to convince someone else. Rough patch of road, that's all. The asphalt under me was glass smooth. Up ahead, the glow of a smaller checkpoint station came into view. Not the full border crossing, just one of those outlying stops they sometimes use for random inspections or way checks. Tonight, it looked deserted. Lane lights were on, casting long cones of white across the concrete. But I didn't see a single marked vehicle, no silhouettes of officers moving around. Just empty booths, fluorescent hum, and the quiet hiss of sodium lamps. The knocking started again as I rolled closer. Thump, 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 a little faster now. Still not frantic, but insistent. Like whoever, whatever, was doing it had gotten my attention and didn't intend to let go. It was coming from the back, but closer than cargo usually feels. Not deep inside a container. Felt like it was in the skin of the truck, right where trailer meets frame. I made a decision then that I still go back and forth on. Could have kept driving. Could have pretended I didn't hear it, dropped the load, logged my hours, and gone home none the wiser. Instead, I flicked on my right blinker and pulled into the checkpoint. Old habit. If something feels off, you stop where there are cameras and lights. Places where, in theory, bad things don't like to get too close. I rolled to a stop in the nearest lane. Dash clock read 2:37 a.m. My headlights washed over the empty booth. No officer stepped out. Nobody waved me forward. When the truck settled into idle, the knocking stopped. Just stopped. The sudden silence rang louder than anything. No thumps. No rattles. Even the engine seemed muted, like the truck was holding its breath. I waited a few seconds, ears straining. Nothing. All right, I said, more to myself than anyone else. Let's see what we've got. I grabbed my flashlight from its hook, shoved the door open, and climbed down. The night air hit me in the face, warm, carrying that mix of diesel, dust, and old rubber you get around checkpoints. Underneath it, faint but there, was a sharper smell. Ozone and something metallic, like a coin held too long in a sweaty palm. The lights overhead buzzed quietly. A moth pinged against the fixture, frantic and small. Beyond the concrete islands and painted lines, the desert was a dark wall, absorbing the glow and giving nothing back. I walked down the side of the rig, beam moving along the trailer's length. Steel containers sat locked on the chassis, their surfaces dull and unmarked. Company seals untouched. No bulges, no dents, no scuffs on the impact bars. I stopped halfway, laid my palm flat against the side panel, and stood there, listening. Nothing. No ticking, no shifting, no faint echo of movement. Just the low, steady vibration of the engine through the frame, like a sleeping animal's heartbeat. Anyone in there? I said before I could stop myself. It felt stupid the second it left my mouth. These boxes were loaded and sealed long before I arrived. Chain of custody a mile long. Silence answered. I stayed out there longer than I needed to, circling the rig, checking things that didn't need checking. Tires, latches, fuel caps. It wasn't about safety anymore. It was about stalling. As long as I stayed out in the open under those humming lights, whatever had been knocking stayed quiet. Eventually, you run out of excuses. I climbed back up into the cab, slammed the door shut a little harder than necessary, and sat there with my hands on the wheel. The interior smelled like old coffee, sweat, and vinyl, familiar and grounding, for about 5 seconds. Then, right behind my seat, from the wall of the sleeper, it started again. Thump, 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 thump. Fast this time. Urgent. The sound of bare knuckles hammering on a door from the wrong side. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up so suddenly it hurt. My right hand flew to the sleeper curtain, yanked it back in one harsh movement. The bunk was empty, neatly made even, pillow against the back wall, blanket folded. No one crouched down, no one hiding. Just the thin padded wall, gray fabric, and the faint outline of wires running behind it. Thump came again, right where my eyes were focused. The wall itself flexed inward half an inch, the fabric jumping like someone had just kicked it from the other side. I didn't touch it, couldn't. My fingers hovered there, inches away, every instinct screaming not to close the gap. I went for the CB instead. Border unit, this is northbound commercial in secondary lane. Requesting patrol? I said, voice tighter than I wanted. Possible issue with cargo. Hearing movement. The response should have been immediate. Those guys don't like unknowns near their checkpoints. Instead, the CB erupted into a wall of sound. Not clear static. This was thicker, almost wet. A growl buried inside white noise. It rose and fell like breathing, like something pushing itself closer to the mic on the other end. Or back. The words were buried, just out of reach. My name crackled through once, distorted and wrong. Dale. I hadn't given my name. I shut the CB off. The noise didn't stop. It bled into the cab, resonating through the thin metal and insulation. turning the air into a low, vibrating hum. The knocking picked up speed, now coming from more than one point: sleeper wall, then passenger side panel, then, impossibly, from inside the dash beneath the air vents. Thump thump, thump thump thump, like something pacing in circles, feeling along the edges, learning the shape of its new container. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for sweat to bead at my temples despite the AC. Long enough for my breath to shallow out, each inhale tasting like metallic cold, like the air right before a lightning strike. At some point, the station lights changed. A wash of blue and red flared in my side mirror, spinning against the metal of the trailer. Real patrol units this time. Real officers. I heard doors slam, footsteps approaching, muffled voices. The instant someone's knuckles rapped against my cab door, all of it stopped. No knocking, no humming, no voice in the static. Just silence. Heavy and absolute. They had me step out, kept me off to the side while a small crowd gathered around the back of my rig. Flashlights traced along seals, numbers checked against manifests. Then came the bolt cutters, the hiss of air brakes, the groan of metal as the big doors finally swung open. I watched their faces more than the container. A couple of the younger ones looked eager, probably expecting a load of people or contraband. The older guys were stone-faced. The beams stabbed into the darkness inside the steel box. Empty. No crates. No pallets. No tarps. Nothing. Just clean metal. You could see straight to the front wall and both corners. No scratch marks on the floor. No scuffs on the sides. Like nobody had ever loaded it, like it had rolled off the assembly line and gone straight to my frame. They checked the other container. Same thing. Perfectly clean. Manifest says you've got 3 tons of industrial components. One of the officers said. Yeah, I replied, staring into the void where a load should have been. Supposed to. They pulled my dashcam, checked the seals again, called people with more authority and darker uniforms. There was a lot of quiet swearing, more questions than I could answer. When the sun finally scraped its way over the horizon, orange bleeding into a pale blue, they let me sit back in my cab while they argued about what to do with an empty load that should have been worth a small fortune. That's when I heard it again. Not from the back. Not from the trailer. From inside my cab, right behind my seat, against that same thin wall. Thump. Soft. Almost polite. Like a reminder. I didn't turn around. Didn't touch it. Just sat there, staring out at the growing light, listening to the morning shift start up. Engines revving, air brakes exhaling, human voices cutting through the air. Thump. No one else seemed to hear it. Eventually, they detached the empty containers and sent me on my way light. Paperwork, under review. Freight, misallocated. Those are the words they use when they don't have real ones. That was 2 years ago. Since then, I've driven different trucks, took a local job for a while, even thought about getting off the road entirely. But every time I sit in a cab, any make, any year, there comes a night when the highway goes quiet, when the CB slips into that low underwater static, and the truck knocks back. It's not always the same spot. Sometimes it's the passenger door. Sometimes the floorboard under my boots. Once it was the overhead console right above my head, 3 slow taps like fingers drumming. Thump, thump, thump. No matter where it comes from, it feels like the same presence. Same measured patience. Like whatever was in those containers didn't stay behind when the doors swung open. Found somewhere new to ride. So if you're ever hauling sealed steel near the border and you hear a knock from the back, not a rattle, not a chain, but a slow, deliberate knock, don't do what I did. Don't stop where it can move closer. Because freight can go missing. Paperwork can vanish. Containers can turn out empty. But once something learns the shape of your truck from the inside, it doesn't need steel walls anymore. It just needs you. I used to like driving at night. Less traffic, cooler air, scales usually closed. You get into a rhythm out there after dark. Just you and the engine and the white lines ticking past like a heartbeat. If you've done it long enough, you know what normal feels like, even in the middle of nowhere. That's why I know what I saw that night wasn't normal. Name's Hank. I've run the border corridor for the better part of 15 years. Mostly dry van, sometimes containers, whatever pays. That week I was hauling mixed freight. Nothing sensitive, nothing that needed a guard. Just a full box of retail junk the world would forget about as soon as it hit the shelves. Truck was a 2020 Cascadia the company stuck me in. Automatic, lane assist, all the new toys. I never trusted the computers much, but she pulled steady and the AC worked, so I didn't complain. It was just before midnight when I dropped off the last bit of real civilization. The glow of town faded behind me, replaced by the constant low hum of the desert. You know that sound? Wind moving over nothing, the kind of empty that makes your ears ring. Sky was clear, but there was a haze low on the horizon. Forecast had mentioned wind kicking up dust near the state line. I figured I'd hit it, push through, park up on the other side. CB was quiet. The last voice I'd heard was some guy 30 miles back bitching about fuel prices. After that, just static. Even the way station alerts were dead. It was one of those nights where it feels like the whole world clocked out and forgot to tell you. I set the cruise at 62, settled my hands on the wheel, and let the miles start melting. About 20 minutes into that stretch, I noticed lights in my driver's side mirror. 2 of them, white, distant. No big deal. You get used to the staggered dance of headlights behind you. Cars, pickups, the odd bull rack running heavy, they all show up eventually. Out there, another set of lights can actually feel comforting. Proof you're not completely alone. But these were off from the start. First thing was the height. At that distance, most headlights sit at a pretty predictable level in your mirror. These floated higher than a truck, then dipped lower than a car, like whoever was behind me couldn't decide what they were driving. Second thing, no color shift, just pure white. No hint of halogen yellow, no blue tinge from aftermarket junk. 2 clean, cold white dots. I told myself it was a newer rig with weird LEDs. Maybe a lifted pickup bouncing in and out of dips I couldn't see yet. I watched them for a while. They stayed where they were, not gaining, not dropping back. Just hanging there in the dark. The road under me was smooth. The vibration through the wheel was that usual low buzz, tires rolling over asphalt. The air controls hummed. It was as normal and quiet as a truck cab gets. Then the engine hum slipped to the background, and all I could hear was my own breathing. I flicked my eyes back to the mirror. The lights were closer, not by much, just enough that I knew they'd moved. The strange part? I swear in the few seconds I'd glanced back at the road, I hadn't felt anyone come up on me. No extra wind push, no change in engine noise. The lights just edged nearer. Truck behind, you want a round, call it? I said into the CB, more out of habit than anything. You're riding my ass. Silence. Just a soft hiss of static, like a radio turned too low. No engine note drifted in. No headlight beams spilled around my trailer, which is what happens when someone really is on your bumper. In the mirror, I couldn't see a grill, marker lights, nothing, just those 2 white spheres. Clear, defined. No halo, no flare. I eased off the cruise a bit, dropped down to 55. The lights slowed with me, perfectly. No lag, no hesitation. I felt a little line of cold move up my back, between my shoulder blades. It wasn't the AC. I could feel that on my face. This was deeper under the skin. That feeling you get when you just know you're being watched, even if no one's in sight. Probably some idiot playing games, I muttered. Camera maybe, drone, something. My brain kept looking for normal answers because that's what it's trained to do. You can't think ghosts every time a sensor glitches or you'd never make it out of the yard. Up ahead, the green signs started announcing the state line. 15 miles. 10. The haze on the horizon thickened, turning the distant dark into a dirty smear. Sandstorm brewing. I could see the way the few stars low on the sky smeared out, swallowed by moving dust. Behind me, the lights crept closer. By 5 miles to the border, they were right at the end of the trailer. In the mirror, they looked wrong for that distance, too round, too separated, not quite tracking the sway of the rig. They floated a hair to the left of center, then to the right, then back again like they were studying the trailer's edges. Still no spill of beams. Still no silhouette of a vehicle. I cracked the window a couple inches, enough to let sound in. The desert air pushed through, warm and dry, carrying the smell of dust and old rubber from the shoulder. I listened for the whine of a motor, the rattle of a grill guard. Anything. Nothing. Just the wind, my own tires, and some far-off hiss that could have been the storm chewing at the horizon. The lights surged then. 1 second they were at the trailer's rear. The next, they were so close to the ICC bumper that for a heartbeat I thought they had to be inside the steel. Reflexively, I tensed my foot over the brake, but I didn't dare tap it. Last thing you want is a rear end out of panic, even if you can't see what's behind you. The Cascadia's collision alert stayed silent. No warnings, no red flashes. According to the computers, there was nothing back there. Border runners, I whispered to myself. Fancy tech, maybe drones. That's when they rose. Not high at first, just enough to slip up over the outline of the trailer's roof. They climbed smooth and steady, like being reeled in on invisible strings. No change in intensity, no flicker, just 2 white orbs lifting against the dark. My mouth went dry. They didn't arc away like flares, didn't blink like aircraft. They held position over my rig for several seconds, hovering there like a second pair of eyes. I swear I felt something pass through the cab then. A pressure, like the air had thickened for one long inhale. Every hair on my arms stood up. My hands felt slick on the wheel, like the sweat wasn't entirely mine. Ahead of me, the state line sign loomed out of the dark. Now leaving, now entering. All that boilerplate. The wind had picked up, shoving gusts of sand across the highway. It scratched at the undercarriage, tapped at the door panels. The smell of dust got stronger, mixed with something sharp and metallic, like a penny on your tongue. Right as I passed the sign, those lights made their choice. They rose higher, cleared the top of my trailer entirely, and drifted out over the right shoulder, away from the road. I watched them go in the mirror first, then physically twisted in my seat to follow their path out the passenger window. They moved in perfect unison, side by side, slow and deliberate. No flicker from the gusts, no dimming when the first bands of sand hit them. They cut into the storm like knives into fog, glowing steady until the dust grew too thick and swallowed them. In the brief seconds before they vanished, I saw where they were headed. Maybe half a mile off the road, half buried in low dunes, something big and dark stuck out of the sand at an angle. The shape was unmistakable to anyone who's ever driven for a living. The skeletal remains of a tractor trailer. Cab melted down, trailer twisted, frame warped into a permanent grimace. I'd heard about that wreck. Everyone who runs that corridor has. Smuggler truck loaded past capacity. Blew a tire, rolled, caught fire. They say it burned hot enough to warp the sand into glass in spots. No one cleared it all the way. Too remote, too costly. They just pushed what they could aside and let the desert take the rest. Truck had been there for years, according to the stories. Tonight, I could see heat rippling off it. Even through the storm bands, the outline shimmered. Not just the way hot air wavers off a hood, but like the truck itself wasn't done burning. No flames, no smoke. Just that dense, shimmering heat that makes the world bend around it. The 2 white lights hovered above the wreck for a heartbeat. Then they simply went out. No fade, no drift into the sky. One moment they were there, hanging over twisted metal. The next, the desert swallowed them, and there was nothing but the storm. I drove on. What else was I going to do? Pull over into a sandstorm? Go hiking toward a haunted carcass? I kept my hands on the wheel, knuckles white, and pushed through the edge of the dust. The wind rocked the cab. Sand ticked against the windshield like fine rain. The radio crackled in and out, picking up scraps of conversation from drivers on the other side of the line. I didn't say what I'd seen, just listened. At the next truck stop, an hour and a half later, I parked under the harsh fluorescent lights, locked up, and went inside for coffee. My legs felt lighter than they should have, like I'd left something back there on the highway without realizing it. 2 older guys were at a corner table, uniforms of our trade. Ball caps, stained jeans, reflective vests tossed over chairs. They were talking low, but I caught the phrase that made my skin prickle all over again. "Border watchers," one of them said. The other snorted. "You still believe that crap?" "Believe it or not, they were out tonight," the first guy replied. "Buddy of mine saw him last month. Said they peeled off toward that old burn site. Same as always." I stepped closer. "You mean those lights? Behind the trucks?" Both of them looked up at me. The second guy's eyes narrowed. "You see 'em?" he asked. I hesitated, then nodded. 2 white lights, no truck, followed me to the line, then headed off into the storm. The first driver leaned back, expression going somewhere quiet. "Told you," he said to his friend. Then to me, "They're not after you. They're watching that spot, making sure no one forgets what happened out there. Some say they're the ones who didn't make it, keeping count on who crosses over." I tried to laugh, but it came out thin. "Ghost Safety Patrol, huh?" He shrugged. "Call it what you want. Just remember, if they ever stop behind you and don't peel off, you might want to ask yourself what they're looking at." That was months ago. I've run that stretch of road since. I've hit that same state line in clear skies, in rain, in more dust storms. Sometimes I check my mirrors a little more than I should. Sometimes I swear I see a flash of white where no vehicle should be. I haven't seen the lights that close again. But every time I approach the border now, I roll my window down just a hair and listen. The wind out there has a particular sound, skating over sand and metal and bones. And buried under engine noise, under CB static and weather alerts, there's always this faint hum, like a pair of distant lamps burning just beyond what my mirrors can show. So if you ever find yourself running the line at midnight and 2 perfect white orbs start pacing your trailer, don't slam the brakes. Don't try to outrun them. Just hope they're not interested in you, because some lights out there aren't trying to pass. They're making sure you do. I don't scare easy at checkpoints. You run the border long enough and they all start to feel the same. Floodlights, cones, bored guys with flashlights asking the same questions. It's all procedure, routine. Annoying, sure, but predictable. This wasn't. Name's Miguel. Been hauling out of Tucson and Nogales for about 18 years. Produce electronics, medical stuff, whatever fits on a 53-foot box and pays on time. The night I'm talking about, I was running a mixed load northbound, picking up late out of Nogales and heading back toward Tucson to drop before sunrise. Truck was a 2016 Kenworth T680 I'd been in for a couple of years. She had her quirks, like any truck. A faint vibration at 65, dash light that flickered if you hit the wrong pothole. But the engine was strong, brakes clean, no codes throwing. I know that truck better than I know my own apartment. The route from Nogales, you've got your main crossing. Then a few miles up, there's this older checkpoint they don't always man at night. It's mostly for inspections when they're doing big operations. The locals call it the Ghost Gate, half as a joke, half because no one likes stopping there after dark. It was one of those nights where the desert feels hollowed out. No moon, just a smear of stars and the dull glow of the border lights fading behind me. Air outside was still hot, even close to midnight. You get that baked rock heat that sits on the road and slides up around the cab like an oven door left open. CB was dead. Last thing I'd heard was some guy 2 hours south complaining about a scale. After that, just low static. The kind that almost sounds like breathing if you listen too long. I was running easy, doing about 58, not in a rush. Dispatch had me slotted at the yard by 3 a.m. drop. Paperwork. Bunk. Nothing complicated. I saw the checkpoint from maybe half a mile out. Row of overhead lights washed everything in flat white. The little concrete booths looked like teeth in the dark. No vehicles lined up. No strobes. No silhouettes moving around. The main sign overhead flashed its usual warnings. All commercial must stop when operating. Underneath, a smaller digital reader board was blank. No instructions. No open. No closed. Just dead. I slowed anyway. Habit. You don't blow past anything official on that stretch unless you like paperwork and guns pointed your way. As I eased down to about 20, I could see the booths clearly. Empty. The little side office dark. No border patrol SUVs. No state trooper units tucked off to the side. Just orange cones, concrete, and old wind-blown dirt. Guess nobody's home, I muttered. I rolled into the rightmost lane and brought the Kenworth to a clean, full stop just shy of the booth line like I'd done 100 times when they were actually working it. Foot on the brake, transmission in drive, trailer straight as a ruler behind me. Dash clock said 12:41 a.m. I sat there a second longer than I needed to. It felt wrong to just roll through even if it was clearly unmanned. Like walking into someone's house without knocking because the lights were off. That's when it started. The first sound was faint. A soft, hollow clack somewhere behind me. I thought it was the trailer settling on the suspension, steel cooling, rubber relaxing. Normal night noises. Then it came again. Clack, clack, clack. Boots. You know the sound of rubber soles. The soft slap of sneakers. The scuff of worn-out work shoes. This wasn't that. This was hard leather on hard ground. Measured. Even. Marching. I glanced at my mirrors. Nothing but my own trailer in the glow of the overheads. No movement. No shadows crossing the beam. The boots kept coming. They sounded like they were on my left side first, moving up along the fuel tank, across the cab doors. Then the rhythm split like there was a second set pacing the right side, just out of view. No voices. No flashlights. Just boots circling my truck in a steady cadence, like a squad doing a perimeter check. My hand hovered over the CB mic. I don't know who I thought I was going to call. There was no one around except whatever was walking outside. Border Patrol? I called out through the glass, feeling stupid as soon as I said it. The marching didn't break. The Kenworth's AC hummed, pushing cool air across my arms. Outside, the air looked still. The fine dust on the shoulder by the booth didn't even stir. But the sound, the boots, they were getting clearer, closer, like whoever wore them was tightening their circle, drawing in toward the cab. Clack, 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 clack. Now it sounded like they were right under my feet. I flicked the door lock open before I really decided to. Old instinct. If law enforcement wants you out, you don't make them wait. I grabbed my flashlight, shoved the door open, and climbed down into the heat. The night hit me like a wall. Hot, dry, smelling of dust, old oil, and that faint tang of ozone you get near big lighting rigs. The overheads buzzed quietly. Insects pinged against the fixtures. The boots stopped, just cut off. 1 second it sounded like a whole patrol was circling my truck. The next, silence. No retreating echoes. No fading steps. Just me, my idling engine, and the hum of the lights. I walked around the front of the truck, sweeping my beam along the bumper, the shadow under the engine bay. Nothing but my own tire tracks in the fine dirt, crisp and fresh. I went down the left side, trailing my hand along the trailer's side rail, feeling the familiar ridges under my palm. No footprints, no scuffs. The dirt around the concrete islands was smooth, like nobody had walked there in a long time. I reached the back of the trailer and stood there for a moment, listening. The engine idled steady. The desert beyond the lights was a black wall. If you'd seen me from above, I would have looked crazy. Some guy in a reflective vest shining a light around an empty checkpoint at 1 in the morning, searching for ghosts in clean dust. I took a slow lap all the way around the rig and came back to the driver's door. Nothing. No sign anyone had been there but me. I climbed back into the cab, shut the door, and it was like shutting myself into a cooler. Not because of the AC, because the temperature dropped. It didn't drift down like when you let the system catch up. Plunged. 1 second my skin was tacky with sweat from the short walk outside. The next, cold wrapped around my arms and neck like wet cloth. My breath puffed white in front of my face. I checked the climate controls out of reflex. They were still set where I'd left them. Fan low. Temp middle. No way it should have been cold enough to fog the air. The windshield frosted over in front of me. I watched it happen. A delicate lace of ice spread from the bottom corners where the glass met the dash, spidering upward into a thin, white film. In Arizona, in late summer, at a checkpoint where the outside temp had to be in the high 80s. My fingers went numb on the steering wheel. Then the boots started again. This time they weren't outside. They were inside the cab. You know that hollow, slightly different sound shoes make on plastic versus concrete? That subtle change in echo? I heard it behind me. A single step on the floor of my sleeper, then another. Slow. Measured. They stopped directly behind my seat. My skin crawled. Every instinct screamed at me not to turn around. Not to look. Just put the truck in drive and go. Instead, I sat there frozen, eyes locked on the frosted windshield. A voice barked in my ear. "Driver, open your cargo." It was so close I felt the breath of it move the tiny hairs on my neck. Sharp, commanding, the exact tone you get from an inspector who's been doing the job too long and doesn't have patience left for games. I knew that voice, not personally, but I'd heard recordings, safety meetings, old news clips they trot out when they want to remind us to respect instructions at the line. The voice belonged to an inspector named Torres. 10 years back, he'd been killed in an ambush not far from this same corridor. Pulled a truck over. Wrong truck. Wrong people inside. They shot him and left him on the shoulder. I'd heard his voice enough in those videos to recognize it. It was in my cab. "Driver." It snapped again. Closer somehow. Like the words were being spoken just under my skin. "Open your cargo." My mouth was so dry I could barely push the words out. "No." Silence. The frost on the windshield thickened. A solid white sheet now, hiding the checkpoint lights completely. The steering wheel under my hands stopped vibrating. That's what really scared me. Even when you're stopped, there's always a little thrum. Engine, road, the world still moving. For a moment, everything went perfectly still, like the truck had been cut out of reality and set down somewhere else. I don't know how long it lasted. Long enough for my teeth to start chattering. Long enough for my mind to start replaying safety briefings and routes and every bad decision I'd ever made that might have led me to this point. Then, from somewhere behind my head, deep in the direction of the trailer, something else moved. It didn't sound like boots. It sounded like metal under strain. Latches flexing. Locks protesting. Clack. That was the sound of one of the cargo door bars shifting. The company uses heavy steel bars across the trailer doors. You can feel it in the cab when someone really yanks them, a distant clunk through the frame. That's what I felt then, like someone was out there muscling the hardware. Except nobody was. Clack, clack. 2 more shifts, then a low, popping groan like rubber seals peeling away from steel for the first time in years. The voice in the cab went quiet. The marching stopped. All of the attention, whatever it was, moved away from me and focused on the box I was hauling. I stayed where I was. Hands locked on the wheel, breath fogging the air. My brain screamed at me to hit the parking brake. Jump out, run back there, check the doors, make sure the seal was intact. But some other part of me, some older, more animal part, knew that whatever was opening that cargo, it wasn't doing it for my benefit. Eventually, the temperature came back. The frost began to melt, droplets streaking down the glass. The AC started to feel like a sea again instead of a broken freezer. The faint vibration of the engine returned through the floor, through the wheel. Outside noise filtered back in. A distant engine on the highway, a coyote yipping way out in the desert. I put the truck in gear and rolled forward. I didn't look in the mirrors. I didn't stop again until I hit a lit fuel station miles up the road with cameras pointed every direction. Only then did I walk back to check the doors. The seal was still in place. Number matched my paperwork. Lead crimped tight. No tool marks. No scrapes. The lock bar sat exactly where the loader had left it. But the metal of the right door felt cold under my palm. Not cool from night air. Cold. Like something on the other side had its hand there too. That load delivered fine. No shortages. No notes. Warehouse guys broke the seal, swung the doors, unloaded everything like it was any other night. If there was anything else in there with those pallets, it didn't stay. Whatever opened that cargo stayed with me. Once in a while, when I roll through that old Nogales checkpoint and find it unmanned, I'll feel the AC bite a little harder than it should. The glass will glaze with the thinnest hint of frost before clearing. And, very faintly, somewhere between the engine hum and the CB static, boots will march a slow circle around my cab. They always stop behind my seat. Sometimes the voice asks again, soft as a memory, "Driver, open your cargo." I never do, because I've learned something out here. Not every order you hear at a checkpoint is meant for the living. And not every lock on a trailer is there to keep people out. Sometimes it's the only thing pretending to hold something in. I used to feel safer when I saw those green and white SUVs in my mirrors. Border Patrol, state troopers, sheriff's units. Out there on the line, they're just part of the landscape. Flashers in the dark mean somebody's watching the road with you. For a long time, that was a comfort. Not anymore. Name's Clay. I've been running the Southern Corridor 16 years now. Mostly reefer and dry van out of El Paso, Nogales, sometimes Laredo when the money's right. The night this happened, I was hauling a half-empty dry box northbound, making my way along a stretch of highway that runs parallel to the border, then cuts up through some scrubby hills and shallow canyons. Truck was a 2019 Freightliner Cascadia. Nothing fancy, but she rode smooth. Autotrans, decent mattress, dash full of electronics I barely trust. It was early spring, cool nights, dry days, good driving weather. My logbook had me rolling into that section around 4 a.m. That's the hour people don't think about when they say late. Midnight still feels like night, bars closing, people finishing shifts. By 4, the world gets strange. You're too far from yesterday, not close enough to morning. The highway feels abandoned, like you're driving through the empty space between days. Sky was clear. Stars stretched from horizon to horizon, but faint, washed out by the distant glow of border stations and towns I couldn't see. Wind was low, just enough to hum past the cab and push a little sideways at the trailer. CB was mostly dead. The last traffic I'd heard was over an hour back. A couple of drivers swapping info about a checkpoint that had been open earlier. After that, just the low hiss of static and the occasional pop when someone keyed up too far away to make out. I had the cruise set at 60, hands light on the wheel, eyes scanning that familiar rhythm. Dash, mirrors, road, sky. Been doing it so long my body does it even when my brain's wandering. I remember glancing at the clock, 4:07 a.m., and thinking I might actually be on time for once. That's when I saw the lights. Not ahead. Behind me in the driver's side mirror. 2 bright headlights, low and wide like a truck or SUV, and on top of them, the unmistakable flash pattern of a light bar. Blue-white, fast tails. Border Patrol style. They weren't on full pursuit, just that controlled, pulsing pattern they use when they want your attention without waking the dead. Great, I muttered. Random check. I hit my turn signal, eased off the cruise, and let the rig slow from 60 to about 40. The shoulder along that stretch is narrow, gravel breaking away to scrub and rock. I picked a spot where the ground looked level enough, flicked on my hazards, and guided the truck onto the side as gentle as I could. Dust puffed up in the mirrors. The SUV followed, staying a steady distance behind me. Flash bar washing the inside of my cab with blue-white strobes every half second. I brought the truck to a full stop, parking brake on. Foot still on the service brake out of habit. Flashers pulsed behind me. The engine idled with that low, comforting rumble. Reefer off, light load. No temp control tonight. The air in the cab smelled like old coffee, vinyl, and my own sweat. Routine. Done it 100 times. You step out, hand over your CDL, answer the usual. Where you coming from? Where you headed? Anyone else in the truck? Do you mind if we take a look? I grabbed my cap, thumbed the door lock, and swung the driver's door open. The night hit me. Cold, dry air with that metallic edge you sometimes get before a storm. Even though the sky above was clear, the smell of dust and distant sagebrush pushed into the cab. I climbed down, boots crunching on gravel. Hazards clicked rhythmically behind me, little orange reflections dancing on the trailer's side. I turned to face the SUV. There was nothing there. No headlights, no flash bar, no vehicle, just empty highway stretching back into the dark, my taillights glowing red in the stillness. For a second, I thought maybe I'd rolled farther than I'd realized and the unit had stopped up the road. I walked a few steps along the shoulder, squinting into the dark. Nothing. No engine glow. No movement. No silhouette. Just my own rig sitting at a slight angle and the soft tick of cooling metal. I turned in a slow circle. Light wind tugged at my shirt. The scrub along the right side of the road rustled softly. The night sounded hollow, like the world had taken a step back and left me standing inside the echo. My pulse thudded in my ears. I told myself I'd nod it off, just for a second. Seen something in the mirror that wasn't there. Long hours will do that to you. Shadows turn into shapes, reflections into sirens. I climbed back into the cab, shut the door a little harder than I needed to, and sat down. Hands on the wheel, eyes on the empty rear view. The cabin felt smaller. The hum of the engine suddenly loud, like I'd climbed inside it instead of it being under the hood. I took a breath, reached for the shifter. Blue-white light exploded across the inside of the cab. It came from behind me, that unmistakable strobe pattern. The rearview mirror flared with it, washing out everything else. My dash lit up in a cascade of reflected color. My heart jumped hard enough to hurt. I snapped my eyes to the mirror. The SUV was back, about 50 yards behind my trailer this time, parked dead center in the lane. Headlights on, flash bar strobing. I could see the blocky shapes of the roof rack, the squared hood, even the faint suggestion of the green stripe along the side. But I couldn't hear it. No diesel purr, no idle hum, no crunch of tires on gravel from when it would have pulled up. Just the pounding of my own pulse in my ears and the steady buzz of my truck's engine. I fumbled for the CB mic. Unit behind northbound commercial. You want me to stay put or roll up? I asked, voice a little shakier than I liked. Static answered, then faintly a couple of words. I again, who's there? Not forward or back this time. Sideways. Slowly, like a boat drifting off a dock. The flash bar slid to the right in my mirror. The glow washed over my trailer's corner, then along the side, then past the passenger window. I turned my head and saw it clearly through the glass. A Border Patrol SUV pacing my cab at walking speed. The light bar was solid. The doors, the grille, the reflective decals. All of it looked clean and real under its own strobing lights. But the tires, my brain snagged on them, they barely touched the pavement. Maybe half an inch off, maybe less. Just a thin strip of black shadow under each wheel, not quite aligned with the ground. The world outside the SUV looked bent. The lines of the road and the scrub and even the stars behind it warped slightly, like heat haze on a summer day, except the air was cold enough now that I could see my breath fog the window. I don't know why I did it, but I found myself opening the door. The second the latch clicked, the flashers cut out. No fade, no slow dimming, just instant darkness like someone had pulled a plug. My eyes, punched by all that light, took a second to adjust. When they did, the right lane next to me was empty. No SUV, no afterglow. The only thing left was the smell. It hit me in a wave when I opened the door fully. Burnt rubber and hot metal, layered over something sharper. Ozone. The scent you get under high power lines right before a storm. Except the night was clear. The air outside my rig was dry and still. The highway was empty in both directions. I climbed down anyway. Gravel crunched under my boots. The wind picked up just enough to tug at my sleeves, cold against the thin sweat I hadn't noticed cooling on my neck. I walked slow along the side of the trailer, flashlight beams sweeping the shoulder, the lane, the scrub. Nothing disturbed the dust except my own tracks and the long, straight marks my tires had left when I pulled over. No other tire prints. No fresh scuffs. No sign that anything with weight had sat on that asphalt in a long time. I shone my light across the road. The beam fell on a weather-beaten sign maybe 50 yards ahead, half hidden in the dark. It marked a pull-off. A small scenic overlook I'd forgotten was there. Past that, the land dropped away into a short canyon. That's when I decided I was done playing. I got back in the truck, shut the door, locked it, and put the rig in gear. I didn't look in the mirror. I didn't hit the CB again. I just eased back onto the lane and rolled, slow at first, then up to cruising speed. I made the yard a little before dawn. Later that morning, after a few hours sleep and too much bad coffee, I mentioned what I'd seen to one of the regular Border Patrol guys who sometimes parked in the same diner lot. Not the ghost stuff, just that I thought a unit had tried to pull me and then disappeared. He went quiet in a way that made the tiny hairs on the back of my neck stir again. "What stretch?" he asked. I told him, gave him the mile marker, the rough time, mentioned the overlook. He stared into his cup for a long second. "There's no units assigned there on nights anymore," he said. "Hasn't been since the incident." He didn't have to explain. I'd heard the story like everyone else who drives that road. A patrol SUV lit up a truck late one night, gave chase when it didn't stop. High speed through the canyon curves. Then nothing. They found tire marks skidding toward the edge of a cliff. No wreck below. No debris. No gouges on the rock. Just tracks that ended at the lip and vanished. "Sometimes," the officer said quietly, "drivers call in, say a unit pulled them over out there. We check logs, GPS, manpower. Nobody's there. Fake units." I asked, "Coyotes? Cartel?" He looked at me then. Really looked like he was trying to decide how much to say. "Maybe," he said finally. "Or maybe some guys don't know they're off shift yet." I didn't tell him about the floating tires, about the lights cutting out like a switch, about the way the air had smelled like a fresh burnout when there were no marks on the road. That was 6 months ago. Since then, I've seen plenty of real SUVs. Flashers bouncing off my mirrors, engines rumbling, radios crackling. I pull over, I answer questions, I roll on. But every now and then, on a quiet stretch near the line, I'll catch a flicker of blue-white in the corner of my eye. A hint of a light bar where no vehicle shows up on the dash sensors. The CB will pop with half a transmission, numbers and codes that don't match anything current. And once, just once, I glanced at the shoulder as I passed that old overlook and saw fresh tire marks in the dust. They ran parallel to mine for a few yards, then angled toward the edge and ended in a razor-clean line. No slide, no scatter, just gone. Now, when I see flashers in my mirrors at 4 in the morning, I don't feel safer. I listen hard for the engine, because if the lights are there and the sound isn't, I don't pull over on that stretch anymore. Whatever's trying to stop trucks out there had its chance. And I'm not interested in finding out what happens when you walk all the way up to a vehicle that isn't really on the road anymore. I've broken a lot of unwritten rules out on the road. Run a little heavy. Push the clock when you're close to the receiver. Take a sketchy shortcut because the GPS says it'll shave off 20 minutes. We all do it whether we admit it or not. But there's one rule I never thought twice about because it always made sense. Don't pick up hitchhikers near the border. You spend enough nights running that line between the US and Mexico, you see some things. People hiding in brush, shadows that move wrong, lights where there shouldn't be lights. You learn to keep rolling. You're a driver, not a rescuer. Not out there. The night this happened, I didn't break that rule. And I'm pretty sure that's why I'm still here to talk about it. My name's Frank. I've been trucking close to 25 years. These days, I mostly run reefer loads between distribution centers in Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. The run that night was standard. Frozen food out of Nogales heading up toward Tucson. Late departure, early dock time. Truck was a 2018 Peterbilt 579. Reliable enough. The cab had that lived-in smell coffee, diesel, old air freshener that gave up months ago. I'd run the route so many times I could have drawn it mile for mile with my eyes closed. It was just past midnight when I came out of the last little glow of town and into the real dark. You know that border desert night. Sky stretched wide, stars muted behind a faint haze of dust and distant light pollution. The air outside was still warm but dropping, that metallic coolness starting to creep in through the vents. The road ahead narrowed to a tunnel of pale yellow in my headlights. On either side, low scrub and sand like an ocean that forgot how to move. CB was quiet. I had it on volume low, more out of habit than expectation. Nobody had said anything for at least an hour besides a half-asleep 10 to 4 from a guy I'd passed back near the last truck stop. I had the cruise at 61. Hands just resting on the wheel. That trance state you get in after enough miles, where the world shrinks down to 3 things. The hum of the engine under your feet, the rhythm of the lines sliding past, and the glow of your dash instruments. I remember glancing down and seeing the time on the digital display. 12:17 a.m. When I looked back up, he was in the road, about 300 yards ahead, dead center in my lane, a lone figure standing with his back to me. Thin, tall, dark clothes, dark hair, arms at his sides. Not walking, not waving, just standing, facing away, pointing. His right arm was extended out, not toward me, not up the road, sideways, off into the desert. Finger rigid, held at an angle that made my shoulder twinge just looking at it. You see things out there that turn out to be nothing. Shadows, signs, bits of tarp snagged on fencing. My first thought was mirage, some trick of light off a road marker. Then my headlights washed over him. He didn't disappear. The beam caught the back of a dusty jacket, the frayed cuffs of jeans, boots ground white at the heels. Black hair, matted flat. His skin, what I could see of it on his neck and hand, looked wrong. Not tan, not pale, just colorless, like the desert had bleached him. He didn't turn, didn't flinch, didn't lower that pointing arm. My chest tightened. This was the part where, in any normal situation, you hit the brakes, flash your hazards, roll up slow so you don't run anybody over. Except every instinct I had was screaming not to stop. Not fully. Not here. I laid on the air horn instead. The blast shattered the quiet, echoing off nothing, throwing the sound right back at me. The desert swallowed it in seconds. The hitchhiker didn't move. No flinch. No startle. His hand didn't tremble. It continued to point into the black sea of desert, perfectly steady, like a mannequin bolted to the center line. I eased off the cruise, foot hovering over the brake, but I didn't stomp it. Dropped down to 40, 35. I watched him grow in the windshield, a fixed silhouette against the asphalt. "Get out of the road, man," I muttered. "Come on. Move." I hit the horn again, shorter this time. The sound rolled over him. Nothing. Something in my gut told me that if I came to a complete stop with him standing right there, directly in front of my bumper, nothing good would happen. I slid my hand to the wheel and started to edge into the oncoming lane to go around him. That's when he broke. Not like a living person turning, like a bad video feed glitches. For a split second, he split in two. One version of him stayed where he was, back to me, arm out, finger pointing. The other slid sideways, just a few feet, like a smear of shadow pulled by invisible hands. The air around them rippled, as if heat waves had jumped off the asphalt all at once. My headlights caught both shapes at the same time, and my brain didn't know where to focus. Double image. Echo. Mirage. Then the second figure separated fully, stepping out of the glitch like he'd been hidden inside it. He turned. The first one never did. He kept pointing into the desert, frozen in that unnatural stance. The second figure rotated slowly to face me, head tilting forward just enough that the brim of his unseen shadow should have hidden his eyes. Except there were no eyes to hide. Just black. Not dark irises. Not deep-set sockets. Black. From lid to lid. No whites. No shine. Just two pits that my headlights couldn't fill, no matter how bright they burned. My truck rolled forward in that slow-motion way things do when adrenaline hits, where every second stretches tight. The hitchhiker's mouth opened. I didn't hear him so much as feel him. Return. The word didn't come through my ears. It rattled the cab. Glass shivered in the side windows and mirrors, humming for half a second like something massive had rolled under the frame. The steering wheel buzzed under my palms. My teeth clicked together hard enough to hurt. The air in the cab changed. The canned, recycled smell of a sea and stale coffee vanished under a sudden rush of cold, metallic, electric, tinged with dust and something older, like rain on sunburnt asphalt that never actually falls. Every part of me reacted before conscious thought caught up. I shoved my foot down. The engine roared, a deep, angry bellow, and the peat surged forward. I yanked the wheel just enough to give the standing figure a wide berth, the front end drifting into the oncoming lane and then back. For a heartbeat, the two shapes of the hitchhiker slid along my hood like reflections in warped glass. The air in the cab changed. The canned, recycled smell of a sea and stale coffee vanished under a sudden rush of cold, metallic, electric, tinged with dust and something older, like rain on sunburnt asphalt that never actually falls. Every part of me reacted before conscious thought caught up. I shoved my foot down. The engine roared, a deep, angry bellow, and the peat surged forward. I yanked the wheel just enough to give the standing figure a wide berth, the front end drifting into the oncoming lane and then back. For a heartbeat, the two shapes of the hitchhiker slid along my hood like reflections in warped glass. Then they came apart like smoke. By the time my trailer passed where they'd been, there was nothing in the lane behind me but empty road lit up in my mirrors. Nothing standing, nothing lying in the ditch, just a faint swirl of dust caught in the turbulence of my passing. I kept my foot down longer than I should have. Speed crept past 60, 65. The engine's note climbed. The road blurred. It wasn't until my hands started to cramp on the wheel that I realized how hard I was gripping it. I forced myself to breathe, in through the nose, out through the mouth. I glanced at the rear view, half expecting to see someone sitting on my bumper. The highway behind me was bare. That should have calmed me. Didn't. At mile marker 42, my driver's side door unlocked. Just a little metallic thunk under my elbow. The same sound it makes when you hit the switch. Except I hadn't touched the switch. I stared at it for a second, my brain scrambling for something rational. Faulty wiring. Vibration. Maybe I'd brushed it by accident. I pressed the lock button down. Heard the satisfying clack as it re-engaged. 10 miles later, it unlocked again. This time I watched it. The switch moved on its own. Just a tiny twitch downward, like someone pressed it with an invisible finger. The lock released. A breath of cold air slid across my neck, even though the windows were up and the AC vents were pointed at my chest. I locked it again, harder than necessary, as if more force would make a difference. From there, it got worse. For the next 50 miles, that door played its own game. Lock, unlock, lock, unlock. Sometimes minutes apart, sometimes almost in rhythm with the little bumps in the road. Every time it clicked open, I felt it in my chest, like a small door inside me had swung inward too. Once, both doors unlocked at the same instant. A double clack in the quiet. The cab suddenly felt too exposed, like something could just step in if it wanted to. I jammed both locks down and kept my palm over the switch, knuckles white. The CB, which had been dead all night, hissed to life. At first it was just static. Then, underneath, a whisper of voices. Too low to make out words, but layered, as if several people were talking over each other in a room far away. It rose in volume until it matched the engine noise. Return, return, return. It wasn't quite clear, but my mind filled in the gaps. The same word the hitchhiker had spoken, crawling up through the speakers, through the vents, through the thin insulation in the cab. Return. I reached up and twisted the CB off. The sound kept going. Not from the unit this time, from somewhere deeper. The paneling in the doors, the thin space behind the dash, the hollow of the sleeper bunk behind my seat. Return. The locks thumped again. I don't remember much of the next stretch of road in detail, just fragments. White lines flicking under my headlights like a flipbook. Mile markers sliding by. My own heartbeat keeping time with the relay clicks in the doors. At some point, the eastern sky started to lighten. Not sunrise yet, just that faint graying that says the night is thinking about letting go. As the dark thinned, the knocking stopped. That's what it was, by the end, not just clicks but knocks. Soft ones, from inside the door like knuckles tapping plastic. Testing. The voices faded with the stars. The cab warmed back up to normal. My breath stopped fogging in the small patch of glass near the vent. I crossed a small overpass and saw the first gas station glow on the horizon. I pulled in too fast, tires crunching on gravel, trailer groaning at the abrupt turn. When I finally rolled to a stop under the fluorescent canopy, I sat there for a full minute with my hand on the door handle, listening. Silence. I opened the door and climbed down. The air was already warming, carrying the smell of fuel, hot concrete, old rubber. Mundane things. Normal things. The kind of smells that anchor you back in reality. I checked the door seals. The locks. Ran my fingers along the edge where metal meets weather stripping. Everything looked fine. Solid. Trucks rattled past on the highway. A kid in a faded shirt dragged a squeegee across a minivan's windshield a few pumps over. For a second, I almost convinced myself I'd had some kind of waking nightmare. Microsleep, stress, too many miles. Maybe the door locks had never moved. Maybe that hitchhiker had just been a shadow on the road. Then I saw it. On the inside of the driver's door, just below the handle, for faint streaks ran downward in parallel. Not scratches, the paint wasn't broken. More like something oily had dragged there. The marks caught the light in a way the rest of the panel didn't. For lines, like fingers, reaching down. I scrubbed at them with a rag until my arm hurt. They never fully went away. Even now, if you catch the door at the right angle, you can see them. That was a year ago. I still run that route. You don't just quit because of one night, not if the road is all you've got. But I don't look too closely at hitchhikers anymore. Especially the ones who don't try to flag you down. And sometimes on empty stretches near the border, when the night is at its deepest and the sky feels too low, my door lock will twitch. Just once. Just enough to remind me that out there in the dark, not everything is trying to get in your truck. Some things are trying to send you back to wherever they came from. And some nights, when the CB slips into just the right kind of static, I still hear that word hiding inside the noise, pressing against the glass of my mirrors like a fingertip. Return. I've seen my share of weird stuff on that stretch around El Paso. Border checkpoints that feel more like ghost towns. Lights in the desert where no road's supposed to be. You run that corridor long enough, you start collecting stories whether you want to or not. This one, I didn't collect. Tagged along. Name's Russell. Been driving close to 20 years, mostly southwest lanes. I was in a 2020 Kenworth T680 that night, hauling dry freight. Nothing dramatic, just bulk packaged food out of Tucson headed east through El Paso. Then up toward Odessa. It was one of those runs that look simple on paper. Pick up at dusk, roll through the night, hit the receiver at 9 in the morning. Dispatch loves those. One long, continuous line on a map. I hit the El Paso area a little after 2:30 a.m. If you've never driven that stretch at that hour, it's hard to explain the feeling. Cities fall away behind you, but the light doesn't vanish completely. It hangs on the horizon, low and distant, a faint orange bruise against a black sky. The desert out there doesn't feel empty, feels paused, like everything's holding its breath. Weather was calm, clear sky, bit of haze low to the ground. No rain in the forecast. The air coming through the vents had that metallic dryness I associate with border deserts. Dust and road heat and the faint leftover smell of burned rubber where some poor bastard blew a tire hours earlier. CB was mostly dead. A couple of drivers swapping directions in Spanish far off. Another guy, American accent, complaining about a scale ticket. After that, just low static. A soft, breathy noise under the hum of my engine. I had the Kenworth settled at about 62 in cruise. Trailer felt steady. No sway, no pull. Fuel good. Hours good. It was one of those rare nights where I wasn't behind schedule and didn't feel like hell. That's probably why I noticed the lights ahead of me so quickly. At first, it was just a faint glow on the horizon. Out there, between hills and dips, it's hard to judge distance. But as I crested a long, shallow rise, I saw them clearly. Truck taillights, several sets, all in the right lane, strung out in a line maybe half a mile ahead. Little red rectangles in the darkness. Convoy, I muttered. Didn't hear anybody call it. It happens. Sometimes guys run together without announcing it. Still, something about the pattern made me sit up a little straighter. The lights were too even. Same spacing between each rig. Same steady speed. No one drifting a little, no one lagging, no one creeping up, all the small imperfections that normally make up real traffic. These moved like they were tied together by an invisible rope. As I got closer, I tried to pick out specifics. Make, model, company logos. The road curved gently to the right, opening up my view. In the low glow of their taillights, I could see shapes now. Old-style trailers, squared-off corners, no side skirts. The silhouettes of cabovers and boxy long-nosed tractors, not the sleek aero designs you see now. Old dogs, I said under my breath. Ratty fleet running cheap. But there was something else. No brake lights, not even a tap. In a line of trucks that long, someone always touches the brakes eventually. Momentary red bloom, then nothing. Instead, the convoy kept its exact spacing, rolling down the gentle grade with machine precision. As I closed the gap, I reached for the CB. Eastbound coming through by El Paso. That you boys running the tight pack up here? I asked. Y'all are pretty for 3 in the morning. Silence. Just static and a low, distant hiss like wind moving through tall grass. I frowned, thumbed the squelch a little and listened. No reply, no background chatter. Nothing. The gap between my Kenworth and the last truck in the line shrank. I could see more detail now. Rust stains trailing down the corners of the trailer doors, old ICC bumpers, mud flaps with logos from companies I hadn't seen in years, names half-faded. One I vaguely recognized from a story about a bankruptcy in the late 80s. They were running slow, maybe 50. I signaled left to pass. My turn signal ticked loudly in the quiet cab. The amber reflection flickered on the side of my trailer. I eased into the passing lane, checking mirrors out of habit. Nothing behind me for miles. The moment my truck pulled level with the last trailer in the convoy, something went wrong. My headlights didn't hit it. They should have splashed across dirty white doors, rivets, numbers, reflective tape. Instead, the beams pushed right through the metal like it wasn't there, stretching out onto the pavement ahead as if I were alone on the road. The truck was silhouetted in my side window. Trailer, wheels, axles, all there in shape. But where the light should have broken, scattered, reflected, it just didn't. My beams passed through the outline untouched, projecting onto solid asphalt 10, 20, 30 yards beyond. My chest tightened. I eased off the throttle a little, letting myself fall back a hair to see if it was a trick. The outline of the trailer slid alongside my hood. The illusion, if that's what it was, didn't change. Light went through. Road ahead was clearly illuminated. The metal by my window stayed dark and unreal. My hands tightened on the wheel until my fingers ached. Copy that, convoy ahead? I tried again on the CB, voice a shade higher. You boys running with your lights wired backwards, or what? Talk to me. The static shifted. For a moment, I thought I heard something. Not words, exactly, just a layered murmur, like multiple voices on top of one another. Then it flattened back into a hiss. I swallowed. Just old wiring, I told myself. Oil on the doors, light playing tricks. Ahead, the rest of the convoy rolled on in their perfect, soulless line. No turn signals, no lane changes, no subtle correction when the wind shoved at them. They didn't so much react to the road as glide along a pre-marked track. I sped up, determined to clear them. The Kenworth answered, engine note rising. I pulled alongside the next rig, then the next. All of them were wrong in the same way. Shapes without substance. Old company logos from eras when paint schemes were loud and proud. No silhouettes of drivers in the windows. No glow of gauges on the dashes. And always, my headlights shining through their frames onto the road ahead. It felt like passing a line of ghosts that didn't know they were dead. By the time I reached what should have been the lead truck, my heart was beating too fast, each pulse loud in my ears. Sweat cooled on the back of my neck, damp under the collar. The air in the cab smelled faintly metallic now, like cold steel and pennies. The lead rig was different, older than the rest. Cab over, scarred front, paint worn to a dull, dirty blue. No company lettering I could see. This trailer looked heavier, like it bore weight even if nothing sat inside. The rear doors were bare. No stencil, no logo, just rust eating the hinges. As I pulled up beside the cab, my peripheral vision caught something that made my skin crawl. No driver. Not driver slumped down. Not driver in shadow. Just a wheel turning itself. Seat empty. Cab interior dark. The truck moved with that same eerie precision as the others, keeping exactly to its lane, never drifting, never correcting. The CB crackled. Copy, eastbound? A voice whispered in amid the static. I snatched the mic. Yeah, this is eastbound coming up on your left. You boys playing some kind of joke? I'm seeing rigs with no drivers and lights that don't catch metal. You hearing me? There was a sound then like distant coughing. Or maybe water rushing over rocks, faint and constant. Rivers up. Keep going, keep going. The voice didn't sound like it belonged to one person. It bent between tones, old, young, male, maybe female underneath it all. Like a whole group trying to speak through one mouth. My scalp prickled. Say again, I asked. Nothing. The lead truck's cab, empty as a forgotten room, slid past my side window. For a moment, my lane and its lane overlapped in a way that made no sense. The shoulder seemed farther away and closer at the same time. The sky behind its outline looked wrong. Stars smeared into pale, streaking lines. Then it happened. The old rig turned. Not with the slow, deliberate movement of a driver checking a mirror, signaling, then merging. It just shifted. One moment it was in the right lane, the next it was overlapping mine, the outline of the cab sliding directly into the space my Kenworth occupied. It phased through my truck. There's no other way to put it. The shape of it poured through the side of my cab like cold smoke. For half a second, my windshield went dark, the world outside replaced by a flood of unfamiliar dials and switches, and a ghostly steering wheel spinning of its own accord. The temperature in the cab plummeted. An icy blast slammed into my chest, so cold and sudden it felt like my heart seized. My lungs locked. For a terrifying instant, I couldn't breathe. I smelled rain where there was no rain. Not the gentle kind. Flash flood rain. Angry, hot desert storm that hits dry rock so hard the air turns to steam. I smelled wet asphalt and engine oil and something else. Panic sweat, too many bodies jammed into too small a space. My ears filled with sound. CB chatter, overlapping and distorted. Shouts. A woman crying. The roar of water smashing into metal. Someone screaming over and over, "Keep going! Keep going!" Even as another voice begged them to stop, to turn back, to look at the rising river. My hands weren't on my wheel anymore. They were on another, older one. Thinner, rougher, knurled plastic under my palms instead of the smoother texture of my Kenworth. The hood in front of me was shorter, squared off. Headlights caught a wall of brown water surging across a low bridge, swallowing road lines, erasing all sense of depth. I blinked. The vision shattered. I was back in my own cab, my own seat, my own truck. My headlights were back to carving out plain, dry desert road. The convoy was gone. All of it. No taillights ahead. No shadows beside me. The only rig on that stretch was mine. I sucked in a massive breath that burned going down. My chest ached like someone had punched me hard in the sternum. My fingers throbbed on the wheel. For a few long seconds, I just drove and listened. Engine hum. Wind. That was it. Then I heard something else. From the back of the cab, faint, as if coming through a wall years too thick. The sound of multiple engines, high and strained. Air brakes hissing. A horn blaring in one continuous, desperate note. And under it all, water. Rushing. Rising. I flipped on the interior light and looked into the sleeper. Empty. Just my bunk, my duffel, my crumpled jacket. The sound faded, like a passing train receding into the distance, leaving only silence and my own ragged breathing behind. I didn't touch the CB again that night. I made it to my delivery, signed the papers, smiled too wide at the dock guy, pretended everything was normal. But the image stayed with me. Those rusted rigs gliding in perfect formation, their trailers insubstantial, their cabs empty. Later that day, killing time at a truck stop outside of town, I mentioned it, in a careful way, to an older driver who'd been running that line since before I got my CDL. The kind of guy who knows every rumor whether he believes it or not. He listened without interrupting, eyes fixed on his coffee. When I finished, he let out a slow breath. There was a convoy back in the 80s, he said. Before all the tech, before we had half these rules. Guys took side money to haul more than they should. Just extra freight, they'd say. He stared past me, like he was watching something only he could see. Flash flood hit a low crossing after a freak storm, he went on. Came down out of the arroyos faster than they could react. First truck went in, second tried to push through after him. Rest followed. Whole line got swept. They found pieces of trailers miles downriver. Most of the cabs, they never did find. He looked at me then. Stories say they still run that route when the night's quiet enough, he said. Looking for the road that isn't underwater anymore. Making the same choices, over and over. I laughed. It sounded wrong in my own ears. Convoy of ghosts, I said. Cute. He didn't smile. Next time you see him, he said, make sure you're not in their lane when the river hits. That was 3 years ago. Since then, I've driven that stretch more times than I can count. Sometimes, in the corner of my eye, I'll catch a line of faint taillights ahead where there shouldn't be any. My heart stutters until a real truck crests a hill and proves me wrong. But every once in a while, the road will be empty on the dash radar, no vehicles within a mile either way, and I'll still feel the faintest tug of air on my trailer, like someone's drafting too close behind me. And on rare nights, when the sky's clear and the desert smells like rain that never fell, my headlights will flash across something that isn't really there. The suggestion of metal, the echo of rust, the shadow of a cab that isn't, just long enough for my fingers to go cold on the wheel. I keep driving anyway. That's what we do. But I can't shake the feeling that every time my rig hums over one of those low dips in the road near El Paso, something else is there too, running parallel. A convoy stuck between one bad decision and one bad night, still chasing a destination they never reached. And on the quietest stretches, when the CB slips into that deep, layered static, I still hear engines that aren't mine, struggling against a flood that isn't there. I still hear the convoy behind me every time the highway goes too quiet. Name's Khalid, 42. I've been running freight up and down this country since I was 19. If it's got wheels and an engine, I've probably driven it. These days it's a beat-up Hino pulling a container between Karachi and Lahore, mostly night runs, mostly alone. People think the job is about diesel and distance. What it's really about is routine. Same stops, same way stations, same patches of broken asphalt you can feel with your eyes closed. After a while, the road is more familiar than your own house. That's why I know what I'm about to tell you wasn't just stress, or some app glitch. It was the only time the road and my phone agreed on something that should have been impossible. His name was Farhan. We started together as helpers. Two skinny kids handing tools to older drivers, sleeping on folded tarps in the back of flatbeds. He was the one who pulled me through my first long-haul night. Kept talking, making jokes, pointing out stupid billboards so I wouldn't drift off. He left trucking before I did. Got married, moved to another city, started working in some warehouse. We didn't see each other for years, but we kept this one stupid thing going, a Snapchat streak. Laugh if you want. Old drivers with an app kids use. Started as a joke. One of the younger guys at the truck stand made us accounts, showed us filters, said, "Bye, Daily Streak Rocco, Warna Kia Zindagi." We took it seriously. Every day, anywhere I was, I'd send Farhan something. A dashboard shot, night road, diesel pump. He'd send back his tea, his kids, a glimpse of the loading bay. It became routine. Two grown men, thousands of kilometers apart, measuring their days with a tiny fire emoji. When he died, the streak was at 624 days. I remember because I checked that number too many times. He went in a car crash just outside his city. Not in a truck. Just a small car, late at night, coming back from his cousin's house. They said a truck drifted into his lane. They said it was quick. I heard about it the next morning on WhatsApp. One of the old crew sent a shaky voice note. I didn't believe it until I called his brother and heard that empty, broken sound in his voice. I was parked at a dusty rest stop outside Sucker when I found out. The sun was already hot, burning the smell of diesel and old frying oil into the air. My truck ticked as the engine cooled, metal contracting. Flies buzzed around a plastic bin. The world felt normal. Inside my chest, something heavy slid into place. My phone sat on the dashboard, the screen dark. Quiet. Streaks don't survive that. We all know how the app works. You miss a day, that little flame dies. Just a number going back to zero. That evening, out of habit, I still opened Snapchat. Maybe a part of me wanted to see it gone. Clean break. It wasn't. The fire icon was still there next to his name. 624 days. No hourglass. No warning. I clicked his chat anyway, thumb hovering over the keyboard with nothing to say. While I watched, the little blue arrow popped up. New snap from Farhan delivery truck. I felt my stomach drop in a way that had nothing to do with the bumpy road under my wheels. I was on the highway by then, night fully settled in. Only my headlights on the blacktop, the stars pale through a haze of distant dust. My cab smelled like cold coffee, old sweat, and that faint metallic chill you get when the air outside has turned sharp. I told myself someone else had his phone. His brother. A cousin. People post from dead men's numbers all the time at funerals. I opened the snap. It was a photo. Blurry. Low light. The camera was pointed straight down. Asphalt. Dark, almost black. You could see the jagged white line of a lane marking, cut off at a strange angle. Bits of glass scattered like ice. A smear of something darker across the road, glistening where the flash caught it. Red. Not bright. Dried. Almost brown. Somewhere out of frame, a light source flashed blue for a second. Then the snap ended. No caption. No timer visible, like it wanted to stay longer than 10 seconds. I pulled my eyes back to the road just in time to correct my drift. The steering wheel vibrated under my hands as I rolled over the rumble strip. My heart thudded so hard it felt like it was in my throat. I told myself again, funeral. Someone sharing photos of the crash. Sick maybe, but not supernatural. Then I noticed the sender info. Sent just now. Not forwarded. Not from memories. Just now. From Farhan's Bitmoji. Same stupid smile in his cap. Same little truck icon next to his name. I drove the rest of that night with the radio off, fingers cramped around the wheel, every shadow on the shoulder looking like broken glass. I thought it would stop. Didn't. The streak ticked up. 625. 626. 630. Every day when the app refreshed, that little fire climbed one number higher. And every day, just once, I'd get a snap. First, it was pictures. Different angles of the same thing. Always road. Always at night. Sometimes from ground level where the asphalt looked too close like the camera was lying on it. Sometimes tilted, as if someone was crawling, dragging the phone. Pieces of twisted metal, dark stains, reflections of emergency lights in shards of glass. Never a face. Never a car clearly visible. Just fragments. Then the videos started. Short clips. Grainy. The picture would jitter, unfocused. Static in the audio. The first one was mostly black. Then the image cleared enough to show a dashboard crushed inwards. The faint outline of a steering wheel bent like a broken arm. Somewhere above, a streetlight flickered. The sound was the worst part. Not shouting. Not sirens. Just wind slipping through broken glass. A deep groan of metal settling. And under it, faint, breathy, like it was coming from the back of my own throat. A voice. Help! So soft I thought I imagined it. I replayed it 5 times, my thumbs sweating on the screen, my cab lit only by that cold blue light. I recognized that voice. You don't forget the man who talked you through your first all-night drive. Farhan. If I had known what was coming, I would have deleted the app then. Thrown the phone out somewhere between Rahim Yarkhan and nowhere. But I didn't. Drivers are good at ignoring things that don't fit the schedule. 3 months after his death, I picked up a load in Karachi headed to a depot near the city where he'd moved. I'd never run that stretch before. The dispatcher rattled off the route like it was nothing. Highway, bypass, little link road toward the industrial area. I didn't connect it. Not until I was already on that bypass and my phone buzzed in the dash mount. New snap from Farhan delivery truck. 749 fire. The number glowed under his name. 749 days. The CB was silent. The road was almost empty. Midnight hung heavy over the fields on either side. only a few farmhouse lights glowing faint and far. My headlights cut a narrow tunnel through the dark. I flicked the radio off entirely. Couldn't listen to some guy arguing about diesel rates while my dead friend was apparently snapping me from nowhere. The air in the cab felt weird. Colder, but not from the AC. A dry, metallic cold. Like the moment before a storm when the hair on your arms rises. I could smell wet dust even though the sky was clear. A hint of burnt rubber that wasn't coming from my own tires. Against my better judgment, I tapped the notification. The video started with static. Black screen. A rattling sound like something loose in a door panel. Then the picture sharpened. I nearly let go of the wheel. It was the same bypass. No doubt. Same curve of the road. Same crooked kilometer marker. Same leaning lamp post casting that jaundiced light. But in the video, the lamp was flickering, throwing light over a crumpled shape on the shoulder. A car, front end smashed in, one headlight still weakly glowing, the other blown out. Glass everywhere. Steam or smoke leaking from under the hood. The point of view was low. Seat belt cutting across the lens. Airbag half deployed, deflated, hanging like dead flesh. The audio was a mess of wind and a distant horn stuck blaring. Under it all, Farhan's voice again. Barely more than a breath. "Bye, please." The snap timer ticked down too slowly. My eyes kept jumping from road to screen, heart punching at my ribs. Then I saw something that turned my blood to ice. In the corner of the video, at the top right, reflected in the shattered side mirror, there were lights. Two bright white beams sweeping around the bend. A truck. My truck. Same light pattern. Same blue parking lamp I'd never fixed on one side. Tiny, stupid detail. But in that broken glass reflection, I recognized my own rig. I tore my eyes up to the windshield. The bypass ahead curved gently to the left. The kilometer marker from the video stood by the shoulder. The leaning lamp post glowing the same sick yellow. The spot where the smashed car should have been was empty. Just a rough patch of asphalt, darker than the rest. A faint scrape on the guardrail. Nothing else. But for a second, my headlights seemed to bend around something. The beams stuttered. The vibration in the steering wheel changed, like the road had dipped under me. The air in the cab went dead quiet. Even the engine sounded far away. I hit the brakes without thinking, easing the truck onto the shoulder. Gravel popped under the tires. I sat there, engine idling, hazard lights ticking a steady orange rhythm on the darkness. The video ended. The cab plunged into dimness as the screen went black. My phone buzzed again immediately. Audio message. From Farhan's account. I pressed play with a finger that didn't feel like mine. Static. Then wind. The faint crackle of electricity. Then his voice, clearer this time. Strained. Wet. Khalid. It's not over. Something creaked in the sound, like metal being pried apart. They didn't find me. The message cut off like a wire had been yanked. Outside my windshield, the leaning lamp post flickered. Once, twice. The light dipped low, then flared brighter than before, washing the empty shoulder in harsh glare. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw it. Not fully, just an impression. Heat shimmering over the asphalt. A darker shape where the car had been in the video. The outline of a figure slumped behind an invisible wheel. Then it was gone. The lamp steadied. The vibration in the steering wheel returned to normal. The engine sounded like an engine again. I sat there, breathing hard, tasting metal and dust in my mouth. My hands were slick on the wheel. My back was soaked with cold sweat. I didn't get out. Whatever was or wasn't there, it felt like it wanted me closer. I could almost sense it, that pull to step down, walk to the guardrail, look over the edge where the darkness pooled. I put the truck back in gear and rolled away. Did the delivery. Signed the papers. Smiled at the gate guard like nothing had happened. That was a year ago. The streak is at 1,800 something now. I stopped checking the exact number. Every day, once a day, the app pings. Sometimes it's just black. Sometimes it's that road again. The broken glass catching light that isn't there anymore. Sometimes it's sky, tilted at a strange angle, like someone on their back watching clouds that never move. And sometimes, it's my truck, my headlights in some reflection, my grille in a twisted chrome bumper, my own cab passing again and again through that one piece of road where a man I knew left the world. Dispatch keeps giving me other routes. I asked for that, told them the bypass has bad memories. But out here, roads connect. Highways cross. You can't avoid everything. Now, when I kill the radio at night and the CB goes quiet, the silence isn't empty. Sometimes the static pops on by itself. A voice half forms in the noise. Bye! I pretend I don't hear it. I keep my eyes on the white lines and my hands on the wheel. But I still carry that phone. Still see that little fire icon next to his name. Still watch the number climb. People say streaks are just numbers. Out here in the dark between cities, I'm not so sure. Some streaks aren't counting how many days you've been friends. They're counting how long someone's been stuck in the last night of their life, waiting for you to answer. I don't get lost anymore. Not the way rookies do anyway. 20+ years behind the wheel will burn the map into your brain. You learn every on-ramp, every way station, every busted exit sign long before the GPS chirps about it. That's why what happened that morning still bothers me. Because I didn't get lost. The road did. My name's Aaron. I haul a lot of freight along the southern corridor, border depots, warehouses, cold storage. This run was nothing special on paper. Pick up a partial load of medical supplies outside Las Cruces. Run it down toward a depot not far from the border, drop by 7 a.m., and either snag a backhaul or park and sleep. Truck was a 2019 Kenworth T680. Automatic, smooth ride, enough electronics to fly a plane. I knew her well. Every squeak in the dash, every rattle in the bunk. It was late winter, one of those nights where the air outside is cold but not bitter, and the sky looks clean enough to drink. I left the shipper around 4:10 a.m. The depot was roughly 2 hours south, mostly straight shot with a few curves and dips. I'd run it a dozen times. Fatigue wasn't bad. I'd grabbed a nap earlier in the day, choked down a strong coffee at midnight, topped off again at a truck stop around 3. CB was quiet. Just a low hiss of static and the occasional pop when someone keyed a mic somewhere out of range. The highway in front of me was empty. Just my headlights carving out a pale tunnel through desert and scrub. The world had shrunk to the usual night driving triangle. Road ahead, dash glow, mirrors. I remember the first sign that something was off. Literally, a sign. There's a particular junction I always expect about 30 minutes out. A green overhead marker that tells you how far until the border spur. I never saw it. Didn't notice at first. The miles were slipping by, the GPS still showing me roughly on the purple line. Then the terrain started to feel wrong. The land on that stretch usually rolls gently. Low hills, dips, and long flats where you can see the faint glow of border lights to the south. This time, the road began to ease into a curve I didn't recognize. Not sharp, just lingering. A long, slow right-hand bend that felt like it should have straightened out a mile ago and somehow never did. I checked the GPS. The little arrow was still on the route, but the display lagged half a second behind my real position. The screen dimmed and brightened like it was having trouble deciding the time of day, even though it was still pitch black outside. Construction, I told myself. New detour. They rerouted and didn't update the maps right. Happens all the time. I settled my hands on the wheel and followed the curve. After a few minutes, the road straightened. The land opened up on both sides into that familiar flat nothing. The lights of a small billboard appeared in the distance, one of those cheap ones mounted low, advertising some gas station and burrito joint in the next town. I'd never seen this one before. As my headlights swept over it, I noticed the top edge was cracked, sagging a little to one side. White paint peeling. A single busted floodlight flickering underneath. The ad itself was faded, unreadable except for a couple of letters and the ghost of a logo. A dead coyote lay on the shoulder a little past it. I saw it clearly as I rolled by. Matted fur, ribs visible under the skin, one front leg twisted at a wrong angle. The glow from my lights caught its open, dried-out eyes for a second. Poor thing, I muttered, more out of habit than sympathy. You see enough roadkill, you don't dwell. I checked the time. 4:49 a.m. The highway eased into another curve. Same direction. Same angle. That long, slow right-hand bend that never quite seemed to commit to straightening out. My brows knitted. I glanced at the GPS again. The purple route line had warped into almost a semicircle. The arrow that was supposed to represent my truck looped around on it like it was circling a drain. The distance to destination number flickered between 64 and 67 miles, like it couldn't decide which way it was counting. Glitch, I said under my breath. Stupid software. The cab felt colder than it had 10 minutes before. The vents still blew their steady stream, but the air had picked up a metallic edge. It tasted like the inside of an unpainted trailer, raw steel and dust and something faintly wet. I rode the curve out again. The road straightened. The land flattened. Up ahead, lit in the same tired way, was a cracked white billboard with a crooked top edge and one flickering floodlight. A dead coyote lay on the shoulder, a little past it. I stared. Same billboard, same angle, same pattern of rust on the support posts, same torn corner flapping in a wind I couldn't feel, same coyote, same twisted leg. I felt a thin wire of cold pull through my chest. Maybe there are two, I told myself. Same advertiser, same design, two dead coyotes. Happens. Even as I thought it, I knew I didn't believe it. I passed the sign. My headlights washed over the animal. For a split second, I could have sworn its head was turned just a fraction more toward the road. I checked the clock. 4:49 a.m. Not 4:51. Not 4:52. The same minute. The numbers blinked once, like a tired eye, then settled. The highway slid into that now familiar right-hand curve. My palms were sweating. The wheel felt slick. The vibration of the tires on asphalt faded to a faint hum, like the truck was gliding on something smoother than pavement. I did something I almost never do. I let off the throttle completely and let the rig coast. Speed dropped from 62 to 50, then hung there, refusing to fall further even though my foot wasn't touching the pedal. The engine RPM stayed just a little too steady, like the truck wanted to go a certain speed no matter what I did. Okay, I said out loud, my voice too loud in the cab. We're fine. We're okay. You're tired. You missed an exit, took a different curve. That's all. The road straightened. The billboard waited ahead. Same crack, same sag, same failing floodlight. The coyote lay a little closer to the lane this time. Not much, a couple of feet at most. But it was enough that, when my headlights swept over it, the light caught its face at a slightly different angle. Its eyes seemed less glazed, less empty. The jaw hung open just a fraction more, like it had loosened in decay. The smell hit me then. Not strong. Not the full stench of rot. Just a faint sour note under the usual diesel and desert air. Roadkill smell, the kind that usually barely registers on a long drive. Except this came through the vents. The windows were shut. The AC was on recirculate. There was no reason I should have smelled anything from outside, especially just passing at highway speed. I checked the time. 4:49 a.m. My stomach dropped. I watched the seconds this time. 32, 33, 34. They ticked up to 39, then fluttered and dropped back to 32. A loop. My skin crawled. The rational part of my brain, the piece that likes wires and mechanics and fuel calculations, started throwing up its hands. I took the curve again. Right-hand bend, same angle, same duration. I tried to count the seconds but lost track somewhere around 30 when the CB crackled. Copy, eastbound? The voice was faint, warped, like someone talking through water. I snatched the mic. Go ahead, eastbound. Who's calling? Static. Then, you're not. Hiss, to be here. The words were swallowed by noise. The hair on my arms stood up, each follicle a little needle. Say again, I asked, throat dry. Nothing but low, layered static, like several voices breathing in unison too close to the mic. The road straightened. Billboard. Crack. Flicker. The coyote stood. It was only 10, maybe 15 feet off the shoulder now. Still on the dirt, but upright. His fur didn't look mangled anymore. It hung in loose clumps, like it had been soaked and left to dry in the wind. His head was turned fully toward the road. The jaw sagged open much too far. Not broken, just unhinged. The angle was wrong, the way it hung, like someone had tugged it down past where bone should stop. As I rolled past, its eyes caught my headlights. They were black, not just pupils. The whole eye. No shine, no reflection, no scara. Just two tar-dark wells that swallowed the beam instead of bouncing it. My hands spasmed on the wheel. The urge to slam the brakes and stop right there almost overpowered me. Almost. I checked the time. 4:49 a.m. Seconds. 32. 37. 34. I realized then that I hadn't seen another vehicle in, I don't even know how long. No oncoming traffic. No taillights ahead. Just me, the cracked billboard, and a coyote that kept getting closer every time reality reset itself. On the fourth curve, I decided to fight. Not the smartest plan I've ever had, but the only one that felt like a plan at all. The road bent right. The GPS map twisted into nonsense. The hum of the tires faded again. The cab air cooled, that metallic edge turning into something sharper. Ozone and rain and the faint smell of hot electronics. My CB popped. Not supposed. I yanked the mic off the hook but didn't key it. You're not supposed to be here. This time the voice was clear. It crawled out of the speaker in a tone that wasn't quite male or female, old or young. It sounded layered, like a dozen people all whispering the same sentence through the same mouth. My mirrors vibrated. The glass hummed in its housing, not from the road but from the words. You're not supposed to be here. Outside, the end of the curve was coming. I knew what waited: billboard, fence, dirt, coyote. I did the one thing that goes against every survival instinct a night driver has. I shut my lights off. My thumb knocked the stalk down. Headlights went dark. The dash dimmed to its nighttime mode, instrument numbers glowing faint and ghostly green. The world outside the windshield vanished. I mean it, gone. No faint stripes, no horizon, just black. The engine still hummed. The steering still sat heavy and real in my hands. I could feel the subtle pitch of the cab as the truck followed the curve I knew was there. But my eyes had nothing. My heart pounded so hard my vision pulsed with it. The urge to snap the lights back on almost made my fingers twitch. I forced my hand to stay on the wheel, forced my foot to hold steady on the throttle. 1, I whispered. I started to count. 2, 3, 4. The CB hissed like a living thing. Whispers rose and fell under the static, too garbled to make out but heavy with intent. The air in the cab grew thick and cold, pushing against my chest. The smell of rain on asphalt flooded the vents, sharp and electric. 7, 8, 9. I felt something press against the outside of the cab, right where my left shoulder was. Not solid, more like standing next to a runaway freight heater turned inside out. I could feel the outline of a presence, tall and wrong, pacing the truck at 70 miles an hour through a world with no light. 13, 14, 15. For a heartbeat, my sense of motion disappeared. The vibrations under the seat cut out. The hum of the tires smoothed into silence. It was like floating. 17, 19. The voice came one last time, so close it could have been inside my head. You'll come back. I almost believe it was my own imagination that answered it. Not if I can help it, I said. 20. I snapped the lights back on. The curve was gone. No billboard, no fence, no coyote, just a straight stretch of highway I recognized from a different route. A feeder that should have taken me toward the depot from another angle entirely. The GPS recalculated with a frantic series of beeps. The purple line thrashed, then redrew itself on a sane path. The time on the dash finally ticked over. 4:50 a.m. My knuckles were bloodless on the wheel. Sweat cooled in a sting down my spine. My throat hurt like I'd been shouting, even though I'd barely spoken. I made the depot a little after 7. Docked, unloaded, signed papers with a hand that shook more than I wanted the clerk to see. Later, over burnt coffee with a couple of local drivers, I mentioned carefully, that I thought there was a screwed-up stretch of road north of there. A curve that felt longer than it should. One of them, an older guy with sunburned neck and border dust ground into his boots, went quiet. "Yeah," he said eventually. "There's a piece of 117 that don't like to stay put. Most of us cut around it now. Ways you don't see on a map." He looked at me. "If you found it," he said, "you did better than some. You're here." I didn't argue. I still run the border, still chase the miles. But I built myself a new rule after that night. If the highway starts to feel too familiar in a way it shouldn't, I don't trust my eyes, or the GPS, or the clock, because I don't think that loop ever really closed. I just think I slipped out of it, left another version of me still circling that cracked billboard in the dark, watching a dead coyote stand up a little straighter every time he comes around. And on the quietest nights, when the road ahead curves longer than it should and the CB slips into that deep, layered static, I swear I can hear tires roaring on a highway that doesn't quite line up with mine, like I'm passing myself, going the wrong way, just a few inches to the left of reality.